Chapter 482. The king of the Qin Empire was sitting in front of his desk, engrossed in a book in his hand. When Jianchen entered the study, he was startled by the sound of the door being pushed open. He shifted his gaze from the book to Jianchen, who was striding in from the outside. A trace of surprise appeared on his face. However, the king was clearly surprised by Jianchen's sudden visit. The king slowly put down the book in his hand and said with a smile, "I didn't expect the imperial protector to return so quickly. Come, take a seat." Jianchen sat down across from the king. He looked at the king in surprise and said, "It's only been a few days since we last met. Your Majesty's complexion is getting better and better. It won't be a problem for you to live to 500 years old." The king laughed happily and said, "As expected, I can't hide it from the imperial protector. A few days ago, I ate a precious treasure of heaven and earth. Then, with the help of the imperial ancestor, I successfully made a breakthrough. Although my strength has increased greatly, it's still not worth mentioning compared to the imperial protector." The two exchanged a few pleasantries before Jianchen cut to the chase. He said, "Your Majesty, in fact, I came back this time because I have an important matter that requires the help of the Qin Empire." The king understood that Jianchen's sudden request for help meant that the matter was serious. His expression immediately became serious. He said, "What is it? Just say it. You are now the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. Your status is extraordinary. Your matter is also the matter of the Qin Empire. I need an army. An elite group of soldiers," Jianchen said. "You want an army? What do you want them for? Do you want them to go to war?" The king's expression was full of surprise. Jianchen nodded and said, "That's right. War." Jianchen then told the king about what had happened in the kingdom of Jessin. When he talked about the destruction of his home, there was a murderous look on his face. After hearing Jianchen's explanation, the expression of the Qin Empire's king turned extremely ugly. He expressed his anger and said in a deep voice, "How preposterous! The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom is truly too arrogant. They actually dare to treat our Qin Empire's imperial protector as if he is nothing. Your Majesty, I will definitely destroy the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, so I need a group of elite troops. Then I will send them to the kingdom of Jessin through the spatial gate. I will pay for the cost of the demon cores," Jianchen said in a deep voice. Hearing this, the king hesitated for a moment, and then said, "Jianchen, you have the right to mobilize any 1,000,000 soldiers of the Qin Empire at will, and you don't need to report to anyone. However, how about we discuss this matter tomorrow?" "All right. I will wait for your Majesty's news tomorrow." Jianchen didn't waste any more time and got up to leave. After Jianchen left, the king's brows were tightly knitted together. After thinking for a moment, he put the book back in its original position and got up to leave. After leaving the study, Jianchen went straight to the Qin Heavenly Palace. From afar, he saw the imperial guards of the Qin Heavenly Palace standing guard like stone statues. This was the Qin Heavenly Palace that belonged to Jianchen as the imperial protector. Although he was often not in the Qin Empire, the guards of the Qin Heavenly Palace didn't slack off. There were people guarding the palace day and night, and there were also people coming to clean the palace every day. "Greetings, imperial protector." When Jianchen passed by the imperial guards guarding the Qin Heavenly Palace, all of them knelt down on one knee and greeted him respectfully. Jianchen carried the white tiger and walked towards the entrance of the Qin Heavenly Palace with his head held high. There was no need for him to personally open the door. The two imperial guards immediately opened the door for Jianchen to enter the palace before gently closing the door. "Your servant greets, Lord Imperial Protector." When Jianchen entered the Qin Heavenly Palace, a few beautiful maids immediately bowed and greeted him. They were the maids of the Qin Heavenly Palace and stayed in the palace all day, even when Jianchen wasn't around. "Go and do your own things. Don't worry about me." Jianqin said to the maids before returning to his resting place. He gently placed the white tiger in his arms on his bed and sat in front of the table alone as he pondered. He knew that using a space gate to transport troops would require quite a few Class 5 monster cores, but he had killed many Heaven Saint Masters and obtained quite a few Class 5 and even Class 6 monster cores from their space rings. He had obtained quite a few Class 5 monster cores in total and even quite a few Class 6 monster cores, so he wasn't lacking in monster cores. Right now, Jianqin was thinking about how many people he should send through the space gate. Although it was impossible to send too many people, he had to at least have the strength to destroy the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom without the help of the Kingdom of Jessen. At the same time, he had to create a sufficient deterrent force. "Sir Imperial Protector, please have some tea." A maid brought over a cup of tea and placed it in front of Jianqin. Jianqin took a sip of the tea. At this moment, a guard's voice rang out from outside. "Sir Imperial Protector, the third prince wishes to see you." Hearing that Qin Ji had arrived, Jianqin immediately stood up and personally went to welcome him. When the two met, Qin Ji laughed loudly. "Jianqin, it really is you. When I heard someone call you the Imperial Protector, I guessed that it was you. I never thought that I would be right." Jianqin chuckled. "Come in and talk. Don't just stand outside." The two entered the hall and sat down at a large table. Qin Ji couldn't help but ask, "Jianqin, I didn't think that you would return so quickly. Have you dealt with the matters at home? Why don't you stay in the Qin Empire for a while longer?" Jianqin shook his head. "I've just dealt with one wave of trouble and yet another. I'm here to borrow troops." "Borrow troops?" Qin Ji was shocked and asked, "How strong is the enemy?" Even Xiaotian and the other 4 couldn't deal with them. Every state preceptor of the Qin Empire is carefully selected. If Xiaotian and the other 4 were outside, they would definitely have the advantage of fighting 1 against 2. Next, Jianqin told Qin Ji the whole story. After hearing Jianqin's story, Qin Ji's expression was filled with anger. He said in a deep voice, "The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom has gone too far. They should be destroyed. However, Jianqin, if you want to send an army through the spatial gate, it would consume too many magic cores. I think you should call some state preceptors over to help. We can still destroy the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. At the very least, they will only exist in name." Jianqin lightly shook his head. How could he not think of such a simple idea? If it was just destroying the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, just Xiaotian and the other 4 would be able to do it. It would just take a bit of effort. Qin Ji went through so much trouble to borrow troops and was even willing to spend a large amount of magic cores to send an army over. His idea was naturally not that simple. "Qin Ji, tell me roughly how many magic cores it would consume to send an army through the spatial gate," Jianqin asked. "Maintaining the spatial gate requires 6 magic cores at a time. I'm sure you also know that maintaining the spatial gate requires an endless supply of energy. If the speed of passing through the spatial gate is fast enough, 6 Class 5 magic cores would be able to send about 600 people over in the time it takes. Based on this calculation, 1 Class 5 magic core would only be able to send about 100 people over. Now, you should understand how terrifying the consumption of transporting an army through the spatial gate is. 1 Class 5 magic core is equivalent to 100 people. 100 Class 5 magic cores are equivalent to 10,000 people. The consumption is indeed huge." Jianqin softly muttered, "Of course it is huge. I think you should give up on this idea. Class 5 magic cores are not as worthless as Class 2 or Class 3 magic cores. 100 Class 5 magic cores can only transport 10,000 people. 10,000 people is too little. They can't do much. You might as well bring a few experts over." Jianqin faintly smiled. "Although the consumption is huge, it's still within the limits of what I can bear." Qin Ji was stunned. He stared at Jianqin with some suspicion. "Jianqin, just how many Class 5 magic cores do you have?" How many Class 5 magic cores can one Class 6 magic core be exchanged for? Jianqin answered with a question of his own. Qin Ji pondered for a while before replying. Class 6 magic cores are extremely precious. Not only are Heaven Saint Master magical beasts difficult to kill, they are also very difficult to encounter. This is because Class 6 magic beasts usually gather in the depths of the Cross Mountains. There are very few of them wandering outside. That region is also a forbidden zone for us humans. All the Heaven Saint Masters who have entered the depths of the Cross Mountains have died, so there are very few Class 6 magic cores in the outside world. As a result, Class 6 magic cores are hundreds or even thousands of times more valuable than Class 5 magic cores. If you want to exchange Class 5 magic cores with Class 6 magic cores, I'm unable to give you a specific ratio. It'll probably range from 100 to a few hundred. If someone needs them urgently, they'll even take out 1,000 to exchange for them. If Class 5 magic cores aren't enough, then I'll use Class 6 magic cores to exchange for them, Jianqin muttered to himself. The next morning, Jianqin went to find the king and asked the same question he had asked the day before. This time the king smiled and said, Jianqin, I've reported this matter to the imperial ancestor yesterday. The imperial ancestor has ordered me that the Qin Empire can provide you with up to 1,000,000 magic cores required to pass through the space gate. If you exceed this number, you'll have to replenish the excess yourself. Hearing this, Jianqin was overjoyed. The king's words had saved him quite a lot of magic cores. Thank you for your generous assistance, Your Majesty. Jianqin didn't refuse and accepted without hesitation. Chapter 483. All right, there's no time to lose. I'll transfer the army right now, but I only need an army of 500,000. Jianqin had an impatient appearance. 500,000 was enough. The king smiled. Jianqin, there's no need for us to personally transfer the army. I'll immediately send an imperial edict to the Eastern Divine Sword Legion stationed outside the imperial city and have them bring 500,000 of their most elite soldiers over. However, transferring an army of several 100,000 isn't that easy, so it'll take some time. Jianqin nodded slightly. All right then, I'll wait here for the news. After discussing the official matters, Jianqin told the king about the Great Zhou Empire's attempt to form an alliance with the Qin Empire. This could be considered as fulfilling his promise to the king of the Great Zhou Empire. As for whether or not the two empires could form an alliance, this was not a problem that Jianqin cared about. Afterwards, Jianqin and the king chatted for a bit in the hall before leaving. After returning to the Qin Tian Hall, he calmed down and called for a maid. With a serious expression, he said, I'm going to cultivate for a while. Go inform the guards outside that I won't see anyone before I wake up. No one is allowed to disturb me. This servant obeys. The maid respectfully replied and immediately left to inform the people outside. Jianqin sat cross-legged on the bed and took a deep breath. Afterwards, he took out the Saint Ruler's skeleton from his space ring. He solemnly examined the Saint Ruler's skeleton. The Saint Ruler's skeleton was around 2 meters tall. The bones were thick and sturdy. Just from the skeleton, one could tell that the owner of the skeleton was definitely a burly figure. The skeleton was snow white, so white that it was almost transparent. It was crystal clear and gave off a faint glow. It seemed like a rare treasure. On the surface of the skeleton, there was a faint layer of light that flickered, as if mercury was constantly flowing on the surface. This was the second time Jianqin had seen the Saint Ruler skeleton. However, it was different from the last time. Perhaps it was because he had broken through to Heaven Saint Master, but he could clearly feel the vast and boundless energy within the skeleton. It was like a vast ocean. Jianqin took a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. Afterwards, he closed his eyes and communicated with the sword spirits of the azulite swords, saying, Qing Sua, help me refine this Saint Ruler's skeleton into chaotic force. Yes, Master. Without any hesitation, Ziying and Qing Suo immediately got to work. Two faint figures condensed above Jianshan's head. They were a violet-robed man and an azure-robed woman. The man was handsome and the woman was pretty, as if they were a match made in heaven. Ziying and Qing Suo extended their hands at the same time, and the Saint Ruler skeleton seemed to be pulled by an invisible force. It directly flew into the air and landed between Ziying and Qing Suo. Ziying and Qing Suo extended their arms at the same time. A dense violet and azure light radiated from their hands, enveloping the Saint Ruler's skeleton and refining it. The sword spirits refined the skeleton very quickly. In less than 4 hours, the skeleton had turned into a strand of gray energy that entered Jianshan's body. In the end, it settled in Jianshan's dantian. Master, use the Azulite Sword Codex to refine the chaotic force. Ziying's voice rang out in Jianshan's head. Their figures also vanished above Jianshan's head. Jianshan immediately did as he was told. This time, it took him 4 whole hours to finally turn the chaotic force into something he could control. Following that, Jianshan immediately looked inside himself. The situation of his body immediately appeared in his mind with incomparable clarity. In his dantian, 2 faint black strands of energy slowly wandered about, emitting an aura that made one's heart palpitate. Last time, Jianshan had refined the 2 ruler armaments into 2 strands of chaotic force in Longevity Valley. He had only used 1 strand of chaotic force to strengthen his body. He had not used the other strand. Combined with the strand he had obtained from refining the Saint Ruler skeleton, there were exactly 2 strands. Looking at the 2 strands of gray energy in his dantian, Jianshan hesitated slightly before carefully asking, "If I use the chaotic force to strengthen my body right now, there shouldn't be any problems, right?" Last time, Jianshan did not know the situation and had rashly used a strand of chaotic force to strengthen his body. As a result, he suffered a great deal of pain. Even with his willpower, he was unwilling to endure it. "It won't happen anymore. Master, you can use the chaotic force to refine your body without any worries. Although it will hurt, it won't affect Master anymore," Qing Suo replied. Her voice was delicate and sweet, extremely pleasant to listen to. "That's good." Jianshan secretly let out a sigh of relief. He had completely relaxed. He immediately controlled a strand of chaotic force to refine his body further. As the chaotic force flowed through his body, Jianshan discovered that his body was no longer as fragile as before. Now, the chaotic force was unable to damage his body when it passed through him. Although it still caused him pain, it was still within the range that Jianshan could endure. Just as the sword spirits had said, it would not affect Jianshan at all. As the chaotic force slowly flowed through his body under Jianshan's control, Jianshan's body strengthened at an unbelievable rate. Even his meridians, bones, and organs were strengthened. After the chaotic force circulated through his body once, Jianshan's body had reached a whole new level of toughness. He could clearly sense that his body was much more powerful than before, and he had only used 1/3 of the chaotic force. Jianshan did not stop. He continued to circulate the chaotic force through his body. After 3 circulations, he finally used up the strand of chaotic force. Jianshan opened his eyes and leapt off the bed with a nimble leap. He landed firmly on the ground and rubbed his body as he looked around. He could feel that his body had become twice as powerful as before. Although it still retained the same flexibility as before, its toughness was probably much tougher than steel. "Ziying, Qing Suo, can I use chaotic force now with the current toughness of my body?" Jianshan asked the sword spirits. "No, Master. Your body has indeed become a lot stronger, but you're still a distance away from using chaotic force. You still need to refine some more chaotic force to strengthen your body to the minimum requirement of using chaotic force. However, you'll only be able to use this impure chaotic force," Ziying said. Jianshan sighed inside. It seemed like it would be impossible for him to successfully use chaotic force in a short amount of time. If that's the case, there's no point in keeping the strand of chaotic force in my dantian. I might as well refine it as well. It'll make my body even tougher. Jianqin acted as soon as he thought of it. He sat down on the bed again and used the last strand of chaotic force in his dantian to strengthen his body. By the time Jianqin refined the second strand of chaotic force, it was already afternoon. As soon as his consciousness returned to his body, he sensed a maid standing outside the door. Jianqin got off the bed and checked his body in satisfaction. He could not help but smile happily as he murmured, "With the current toughness of my body, probably even a high-level great Saint Master won't be able to harm me at all. If this continues, there will be a day when my body will reach a terrifying level where even Heaven Saint Masters won't be able to harm me." Although it was a great pity that he could not use chaotic force, the strengthening of his body also represented an increase in his overall strength. This was something worth being happy about. Jianqin happily walked out of the room. Seeing Jianqin come out, the maid immediately bowed and said, "Imperial Protector, the generals of the Eastern Sword God Army request an audience." A gleam of light flashed through Jianqin's eyes, and he said, "Let them in." Yes, not long after, 3 armored generals strode in from outside. The 3 of them had resolute expressions. One of them was an old man in his 60s, while the other 2 were middle-aged men in their 40s. They wore silver-white armor and exuded a murderous aura with a thick stench of blood. "Greetings, Imperial Protector." The 3 of them arrived in front of Jianqin and cupped their hands at the same time as they greeted him. "Generals, you may dispense with the formalities. How should I address you?" Jianqin smiled, and his expression was amiable. "I am Qin Wuming, the Vice Commander of the Eastern Sword God Army." The old general was the first to speak. Afterwards, the 2 middle-aged men on his left and right also reported their names at the same time. "I am Qin Wutian, the Governor of the Eastern Sword God Army." "I am Qin Wujian, the Governor of the Eastern Sword God Army." "Generals, I presume that His Majesty has already told you about the matter." Jianqin said with a smile. However, he muttered in his heart. He never thought that the 3 of them would have the surname Qin. Could they be relatives of the royal family? The vice commander of the Eastern Sword God Army nodded and said, "Imperial Protector, His Majesty has already explained the matter to us clearly. 500,000 elite troops of the Eastern Sword God Army have already arrived outside the Imperial City and can set off at any time. The 3 of us will assist the Imperial Protector and go through the space gate together to the Kingdom of Jessen." A look of surprise flashed through Jianqin's eyes. He never thought that the 3 people in front of him were actually father and son. From their appearances, there was nothing strange about them at all. However, he then carefully observed the 3 people in front of him, in front of his powerful soul. The 3 of them did not hide their strength at all. It was as if they were naked in front of Jianqin's eyes. However, what surprised Jianqin was that the 3 of them were actually Heaven Saint Masters. The old man, Qin Wuming, was a 3rd cycle Heaven Saint Master, while Qin Wutian and Qin Wujian were 1st cycle Heaven Saint Masters. Jianqin cupped his hands and said, "Then I'll have to trouble the 3 of you to make a trip with me. Since the army is ready, there's no time to lose. Let's set off now." Chapter 484. Jianqin, the Vice Commander of the Divine Sword Corps, and the 2 viceroys left the Qin Sky Hall together. As soon as they left, the 4 of them split up. Jianqin went to the Cloud Palace alone to bid farewell to Qin Ji, while the Vice Commander and the 2 viceroys went to command the army. Arriving at the Cloud Palace, the guards outside all bowed to Jianqin with great respect. They did not hide their admiration for him at all. They did not dare to stop him at all. When Jianqin passed by a few guards, one of them immediately called out, "The Imperial Protector has arrived." This was for Qin Ji. Now that Jianqin's status was extraordinary, He was very different from before. In the eyes of the guards, the fact that the imperial protector had taken the initiative to come to Qin was already giving Qin enough face. If Qin did not come out to receive him personally, it would be rather rude. As expected, as soon as the guard finished speaking, Qin hurried out of the Cloud Palace. Although he was as close as brothers with Jianshin's status was still there. Moreover, they were in the royal palace, so Qin dared not be rude. Haha, Jianshin, what brings you here today? If there's anything you need, you can just get someone to inform me, Jianshin laughed. Qin laughed aloud. He felt proud that Jianshin had come to find him of his own accord. He felt extremely proud of Jianshin. I've come to bid farewell to you. Jianshin also smiled at Qin as he spoke calmly. You're leaving so soon? Why don't you stay a little longer? Qin was very reluctant to see Jianshin leave so soon. Jianshin became apologetic. He said, something has happened at home. I'm worried, so I need to leave as soon as possible. I'm afraid something might happen again. With that, Qin fell silent. He frowned and pondered for a while. Afterwards, he seemed to have made up his mind. He stared at Jianshin with shining eyes and said, Jianshin, let me go with you. What? Jianshin stared at Jianshin in surprise. You want to go to the kingdom of Jessin with me? Qin chuckled and joked. Yep. What's wrong? You don't agree? You've already come to my home. Are you not going to let me take a look at yours? Jianshin smiled freely. He patted Qin shoulder heavily and said, I agree. Why wouldn't I agree? You're welcome to visit my home. I think my family will be very happy. That's good. I was worried that your family wouldn't welcome me. Let's go. Since you're in such a hurry to go back, let's go to the space gate right now. I don't have anything to pack. It's all in my space ring. With that, Qin immediately left Cloud Traversing Palace with Jianshin. Jianshin and Qin passed through the halls of the Imperial Palace, heading straight for the space gate. From afar, they could already see a group of soldiers in silver-white armor walking out of the palace in a straight line. Their steps were orderly, without the slightest hint of disarray. Their footsteps produced rumbling noises like thunder. Although it was monotonous, there was a rhythm to it. The entire group was filled with a sharp aura of slaughter. One could even vaguely sense the stench of blood that filled the air. It symbolized that every single soldier in the group had been tempered by life and death, and their hands were covered in blood. They were elites who had emerged from endless slaughter. Is this the Eastern Deity Sword Legion? They really are the elites of the Qin Empire. They're much more powerful than the 3,000 black-armored soldiers of the kingdom of Jessin. Jianshin nodded to himself as he looked at the soldiers of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion. The Eastern Divine Sword Legion is one of the 5 most elite legions of my Qinhuang kingdom. There are a total of 2 million people. Every person who enters the Eastern Divine Sword Legion is an elite carefully selected from thousands of soldiers. Then they are thrown to the outskirts of the Cross Mountains to train and fight with countless ferocious magical beasts. Therefore, every soldier of the Eastern Divine Sword Legion has experienced countless life and death situations. Their experience is incomparably rich. Whether it is their ability to survive or their fighting strength, they are the best. In the Tianyuan continent, the only ones who can surpass the 5 legions of my Qinhuang kingdom are the elite legions of the 3 great empires. Qin explained from the side with an incomparably proud expression. It really is a very powerful legion. If these 500,000 soldiers were placed in my homeland, they would definitely be invincible. Just these 500,000 soldiers would be enough to wipe out any kingdom, Jianshin praised. Qin chuckled. Let alone wiping out a kingdom, even sweeping through several kingdoms would be a piece of cake. This is because the Qin Empire provides over 200 human-tier battle skills and over 50 earth-tier battle skills for each legion to learn. As a result, every single soldier of the 5 legions knows at least one battle skill. How can their battle prowess be compared to those of smaller kingdoms. Jianqin was secretly shocked when he heard that. Battle skills were extremely precious on the Tianyuan continent. Even if they possessed them, they would not be passed on. Even the kingdom of Jessin did not provide battle skills to the black armored army for free. Anyone who wanted to obtain a battle skill required sufficient strength and contribution. However, the Qin Empire had actually provided over 200 human-tier battle skills and over 50 earth-tier battle skills for free. This was not a normal level of wealth. They really are worthy of being one of the 8 great empires of the continent. The Qin Empire is actually much more powerful than I had imagined. Jianqin sighed inside as he recognized the Qin Empire's strength once again. Very soon, Jianqin and Qin Ji arrived at the location of the space gate. The king of the Qin Empire had already been waiting there for quite some time. 5 old men stood behind the king. Imperial protector, this king was worried that 500,000 soldiers would not be enough, so I discussed with the other imperial advisors. 5 of them have expressed their willingness to follow you back to wipe out the enemy. Let me introduce them to you. These 5 imperial advisors are Shuri, Haoyun, Lai Bo, Jedi Lai Er, Jedi Kaijing. The king stepped aside and introduced the 5 old men to Jianqin one by one. Greetings, imperial protector. With the king's introduction, the 5 old men stepped forward and clasped their hands at Jianqin. 5 imperial advisors, there's no need to be so greedy. Jianqin is very grateful for your assistance. Jianqin returned the greeting with a smile and calmly accepted the help of the 5 imperial advisors. If he could bring a few more Heaven Saint masters back, he could prevent the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom from seeking outside help. Although there were only a few powers that dared to oppose the Qin Empire, he still had to be on guard. At this moment, the vanguard of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion had already arrived at the location of the space gate under the lead of Vice Commander Qin Wuming. Jianqin did not waste any more time and handed the crystal that Chao Kachin had created and the map of the Kingdom of Jessin to the Imperial Advisor controlling the space gate. The Imperial Advisor in charge of controlling the space gate took the map from Jianqin and looked at it. He then placed the crystal in the center of the formation and stuffed Class 5 monster cores into the holes around it to replenish its energy. With the replenishment of energy, the formation on the ground slowly lit up and slowly formed a chaotic space gate. After waiting for a while, the chaotic scene within the space gate gradually became clearer. Jianqin focused his gaze and saw that the scene within the space gate was exactly the location that Chao Kachin had set. He could even faintly see the tall and majestic walls of Lore City in the distance. Yes, this is the place. Let's go first. Jianqin immediately said and stepped through the space gate. With this step, he had directly arrived at Lore City from the Qin Empire. It was faster than a rocket. After exiting the space gate, Jianqin looked at Lore City in the distance and discovered that it was still the same as before. There was an endless stream of people entering and exiting the city gates. Everything seemed very peaceful, and there was no tense atmosphere. Seeing this scene, Jianqin slightly breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the kingdom of Jessin was still relatively peaceful while he was away. Jianqin, is this your hometown? Qin Ji also came through the space gate and stood beside Jianqin, his eyes curiously looking at the city walls in front of them. That's right. My home is in the city in front of us, Jianqin replied with a nod. Soon, the 5 imperial advisors, Qin Wuming and his 2 sons, also came through the space gate. Behind them were the soldiers of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion in silver-white armor. As soon as they walked out of the space gate, they looked around curiously. They all wanted to see what kind of place could give birth to someone like the Imperial Protector. Lord Imperial Protector, where should we send the army? Qin Wuming came to Jianqin's side and asked. Hearing this, Jianqin looked around and thought for a moment, then said, There is limited space in the city. It will be very difficult to settle down 500,000 people. It just so happens that the terrain here is spacious enough. Let's set up camp here, temporarily. Yes. Qin Wuming cupped his hands and then went to arrange for the endless stream of soldiers coming through the space gate. Not long after, the originally spacious area was filled with hundreds of soldiers. Many of the soldiers dispersed under the orders of Deputy Commander Qin Wuming, making space for the people behind them. Jianchen stood nearby and looked at the endless stream of soldiers coming through the space gate. After a moment of thought, he asked, "Qin Ji, roughly how long will it take for all 500,000 people to arrive here?" Qin Ji stared at the space gate for a while. Then he estimated in his mind based on the speed at which the soldiers were passing through. He said, "At this rate, we can probably get 30,000 people here in 2 hours. In 24 hours a day, we can send 360,000 people. It will take around a day and a half." Jianchen nodded slightly. Then he stood there quietly and watched the soldiers of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion arrive through the space gate. A sense of pride welled up in his heart. In the city gate tower of Lore City, the general of the city guard was leisurely reading a book. Right at this moment, a few soldiers ran in from outside and knelt down on one knee, reporting to the general, "We discovered a group of unknown people 10 kilometers away from the city. All of them are wearing armor and seem to be part of the army. Furthermore, the number of people is still increasing. There are already several thousand of them." Chapter 485. Standing on top of the walls of Lore City, the general of the city guards looked into the distance. Sure enough, he discovered a large group of people gathered there 10 kilometers away. Although they were very far away, with his eyesight, he could still faintly make out the silvery white armor worn by those people. Where did those people come from? The general asked in a deep voice. "I don't know. They seem to have suddenly appeared there, and their numbers are still increasing." A deputy general standing next to him said with a panicked expression. The general stood on the walls and stared for a while. In just the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the number of people in the distance had increased from a few thousand to over 10,000 at an incredible speed. The circle was also constantly expanding. With over 10,000 people gathered together, not only was there no chaos, but they also spread out in all directions in an orderly manner. It was obvious that they were a well-trained army. At this time, many people outside of Lore City had discovered the sudden appearance of these people in the distance. Not only did the soldiers on the city walls notice them, even the merchants and mercenaries entering and leaving Lore City noticed them. Some of the bolder mercenaries couldn't hold back their curiosity and rode their mounts in the direction of these people. The city guard commander stood on top of the city gate tower and stared at the approaching mercenaries with a solemn expression. He wanted to use them to determine whether the people in front of him were friends or foes. If they were enemies, then these mercenaries would definitely not be able to survive, and he wouldn't have to risk his life to scout the situation in front of him. Soon, over 100 mercenaries approached the Eastern Sword Legion of the Qin Empire. However, they were blocked by the soldiers of the Eastern Sword Legion. Not only were they unable to enter, they could not see the scenery inside. Every soldier of the Eastern Sword Legion was an iron-blooded man who had experienced slaughter and salute. Moreover, each of them possessed extraordinary strength. Just the enormous and bloody aura they exuded was a great deterrent to these mercenaries. Facing the soldiers of the Eastern Sword Legion, even the unyielding and hot-tempered mercenaries could not help but shrink their necks. Just the aura alone was enough to defeat them. "Who are you?" A courageous mercenary braced himself and asked. However, what awaited him were the cold and sharp gazes of several soldiers. Under the gaze of these gazes, the mercenary could not help but turn pale. He could not help but take a step back. He only felt that the people staring at him were not people, but ferocious beasts. He did not even have the courage to look them in the eyes. Seeing that there was no fighting in front of him, the general was relieved. He knew that the other party was not an enemy, so he immediately said to the person beside him, "Immediately send someone to inform the city, Lord's Mansion, and Chanyang Prefecture. tell them the situation here." "Yes." The soldier immediately ran off. Meanwhile, the general in charge of guarding the city led a group of 500 elite soldiers out of Lore City on magical beast mounts. He personally went to check out the situation. The general stopped when he was 50 meters away from the Eastern Sword Legion. He then dismounted from his magical beast mount and strode forward with his head held high. However, as soon as he approached the people of the Eastern Sword Legion, several dozen cold and emotionless gazes gathered on him, accompanied by an invisible pressure. The general's face changed, and he immediately became stern. He was secretly astounded. He found it unbelievable that these soldiers could actually make him feel slightly pressured, even with his strength as an Earth Saint Master. "Everyone, I am the general of Lore City, Tu Fu. May I ask who you are?" The general clasped his hands and spoke in a humble tone. However, what awaited him were the cold gazes of the soldiers. Not a single person answered him. Tu Fu awkwardly put down his hand. Perhaps he was intimidated by the aura of these soldiers, but he didn't feel the slightest bit of displeasure. He immediately looked inside and saw that there were figures everywhere. It was so densely packed that only 3 layers could be seen. Inside, there were layers upon layers of figures, and it was impossible to see the situation inside. If one didn't fly into the sky, it would be impossible to see the situation inside. Moreover, as the troops slowly moved, the number of people inside increased rapidly. Who are these people? Where did they come from? Is there some kind of secret passage here? The general guessed inside. However, what made him feel at ease was that these people did not show any hostility, so they should not be enemies. Otherwise, it would definitely be a disaster for such a large group of soldiers to suddenly appear outside the city. At this moment, the soldiers in front of the general slowly parted, and a 3-meter-long passage gradually formed. A few people walked out from this passage. Seeing this, the general's expression turned serious. He had already guessed that these people must be the leaders. He immediately focused his attention. The 2 people walking at the front were both young men in their 20s. Both of them had extraordinary bearings. When the general recognized Genshin, he was startled. He hurriedly clasped his hands and said, "Tu Fu greets the 4th young master." Although there were not many people in Lore City who had seen Genshin's face, Tu Fu was one of them. Thus, he recognized Genshin at a glance and hurriedly bowed. Genshin stood in front of Tu Fu and said, "Commander Tu Fu, take your men back. Don't worry about the matters here. This general obeys." Tu Fu immediately clasped his hands, looking like a subordinate accepting an order from his superior. Genshin's current status in the kingdom of Jessin was Imperial Protector. He did indeed have the right to order a mere general of a city guard. "Let's all go into the city," Genshin said to the people behind him. He then rose into the air with Qin Ji and flew into the city. Behind him, the 5 Imperial Protectors of the Qin Empire and 3 people in silver-white armor slowly rose into the air, radiating with various elemental energies. They followed closely behind Genshin. Tu Fu, who had not yet gone far, saw this and was immediately shocked. His eyes widened as he involuntarily cried out, "Oh my God! They're actually all Heaven Saint Masters." Watching Genshin's group fly into the distance, Tu Fu finally returned to his senses after a long time. He let out a long sigh and slowly suppressed the shock in his heart. He was still in a state of shock as he muttered to himself, "This 4th young master of Changyang Prefecture is just too amazing. I wonder where he got so many Heaven Saint Masters from." Watching Genshin disappear into the sky, Tu Fu's eyes were filled with admiration and admiration. Genshin's group flew very quickly and soon arrived above Changyang Prefecture. They then slowly descended under the dumbfounded gazes of a large group of people. Just as they landed, 5 powerful auras shot over from nearby. Chang Wuji, Chao Kichin, Dongyi, Junbai, Tianluo, and Qing Shaofen flew over like lightning. Their auras shook the heavens. The appearance of several Heaven Saint Masters in the sky had alarmed them. They thought that the experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had come again, so their auras were filled with surging battle intent. However, when they saw that the people who had come were all Jianqin, they immediately rejoiced and their powerful auras disappeared in an instant. Imperial Protector, Qing Shaofan and the three others stood before Jianqin and clasped their hands in greeting. Chang Wuji stood to the side and looked at the people behind Jianqin in shock. He was also extremely unsettled, but it was soon replaced by a gratified smile. I never thought that the fourth young master would actually bring back 8 Heaven Saint Masters in just a few days. Chang Wuji was extremely excited. The fourth young master was so capable. He could already see the day when Changyang Prefecture would soar under the fourth young master's lead. Did anything happen in the 2 days I was gone? Were there any movements from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom? Jianqin asked calmly. Nothing. Everything is normal. As for the news from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, we're not too sure. In any case, no experts have come to cause trouble. The Heaven Saint Masters of the Kingdom of Jessin also knew that the king was attacked, so they sent 3 experts from various places to gather in the Imperial Palace. In addition to the 1 expert originally in the Imperial Palace, there are now 4 Heaven Saint Masters. Xiao Tian is still in the Imperial Palace, but he's worried that Lore City's strength is insufficient, so he sent me back to guard this place. Qing Shaofan said. Good. Jianqin nodded in satisfaction. He then turned to Chang Wuji and said, Chang Bo, this is my brother, the 3rd prince of the Qin Empire, Qin Ji. These 5 are the imperial advisors of the Qin Empire. These 3 are the commanders of the most elite troops of the Qin Empire, the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion. They've come with me from the Qin Empire to deal with the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Chang Bo did not dare to tarry and hurriedly asked a few questions. After exchanging some pleasantries, everyone was warmly invited by Chang Wuji to a luxurious inn that they were temporarily staying in. Changyang Ba also received the news. This matter was of great importance to both the Changyang Prefecture and the Kingdom of Jessin, so he naturally could not do nothing. He immediately ordered the inn to prepare the best banquet to welcome these people who had come from the Qin Empire. Because the people who had come this time were either the imperial advisors of the Qin Empire, generals, or princes, their high status made many of the old people in the Changyang Prefecture feel weak in the knees. As a result, there were not many people in the Changyang Prefecture who had the qualifications to attend the banquet. Other than Chang Wuji, there were only 4 people: Jianqin, his parents, and his parents. As for Princess Yu, because she was Jianqin's fiancée, she also had the qualifications to sit. Mingdong and Dugufeng also had extraordinary backgrounds, so they naturally had the qualifications to sit as well. The 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire and the 3 Qin Minggu and his sons accompanied Changyang Ba, his wife, and Chang Wuji at the same table. Because the imperial advisors who had arrived earlier had already told the people who came later about the relationship between Changyang Ba and the others and the imperial protector, the 5 imperial advisors and 3 generals who had just arrived treated Changyang Ba and his wife with great respect. At the other table, Jianqin, Mingdong, Dugufeng, Princess Yu, and Qin Ji were also chatting happily. Because they were all old acquaintances who had met at the mercenary tournament, they were all very happy to see each other. Just as everyone was chatting at the table, the city lord's manor and Changyang Prefecture also received news that an unidentified army had suddenly appeared outside the city. This news was received by one of the higher-ups of Changyang Prefecture, but he already knew the inside story. He only smiled mysteriously and didn't seem to care at all. However, the city lord couldn't remain as calm as him. He immediately dropped everything at hand and rushed over with several experts and an army. When the city lord stood on the city walls of Lore City and looked into the distance, the number of people there had already increased by 20,000. Moreover, there were several large banners in the crowd. The banners fluttered in the wind, and the large Qin character was very eye-catching. Chapter 486. Impossible. There's no way this is the army of the Qinhuang kingdom. The Qinhuang kingdom is so far away from the Jessan kingdom. How could their army suddenly appear outside of Lore City? The city lord of Lore City quickly refuted this unrealistic idea. Sir City Lord, City Guard General Tu Fu came to the city lord's side. Tu Fu, where did those people come from? Are they friends or foes? Is there a secret passage there? The city lord stared ahead with shining eyes as he asked in a deep voice. City Lord, I do not know where they came from, but I am certain that they are friends and not foes because they were brought here by the fourth young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten. Furthermore, Tu Fu paused as his expression changed, becoming rather shocked. The city lord suddenly looked at Tu Fu and asked, Furthermore, what? Tu Fu sucked in a deep breath before speaking with a trembling voice. Furthermore, there are 9 Heaven Saint Masters with the 4th Young Master. They are all unfamiliar faces and are not from our kingdom of Jessan. Since Qin Ji had been taken away by Jianqin, Tu Fu did not pay close attention, so he naturally treated Qin Ji as a Heaven Saint Master. What? 9 Heaven Saint Masters? The city lord was shocked. His face was filled with disbelief. 9 Heaven Saint Masters were nothing to the Qinhuang kingdom. But if they were placed in a small, remote kingdom like the Jessan kingdom, the deterrence they would create would be unimaginable. They would be an incomparably powerful force. This was because even at the peak of the kingdom of Jessan, the total number of Heaven Saint Masters in the kingdom of Jessan was only 11. Even then, there were only 11. I need to go to the Changyang Prefecture immediately to check on the situation. The city lord did not hesitate at all. He immediately descended from the city walls and rode on his magical beast as he made his way to the Changyang Prefecture alone. When the city lord arrived in the Changyang Prefecture, the person who received him was a member of the upper echelon of the Changyang Prefecture. Chanyan Qing, we've known each other for many years. I just heard that several Heaven Saint Masters have come. May I know who they are? The city lord smiled mischievously at an old man in the Changyang Prefecture. The old man smiled and did not hide anything. Since the city lord wants to know, there's no harm in telling you. They've all come from the Qin Empire. There's a total of 9 of them. One of them is a prince of the Qin Empire. 3 of them are generals of the Qin Empire, and the remaining 5 are all imperial advisors of the Qin Empire. The city lord immediately became stunned. At that moment, his heart began to beat faster than it had ever been before. Just the fact that so many Heaven Saint Masters had gathered in Lore City was enough to shock him. However, what he did not dare to imagine was that these Heaven Saint Masters possessed such lofty statuses. If they were not princes of the Qin Empire, they were generals and imperial advisors of the Qin Empire. Any one of these people would be enough to crush a large number of people to death in the kingdom of Jessan. Yet now, so many people of extraordinary statuses had actually gathered in Lore City. The city lord felt an indescribable sense of panic. After learning about the situation, the city lord did not stay for long. He immediately left. The people who had come from the Qin Empire this time possessed such lofty statuses that even the city lord felt like he did not have the right to see them. After returning to the city lord's manor, the city lord of Lore City immediately went to his study. Not long after, a lightning bird with the strength of a magical beast of the 2nd rank flew out of the study, carrying a secret letter marked extremely urgent. It flew as fast as lightning towards the Jessan Kingdom's capital. After the banquet, the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire, Qin Wuming, and his sons were all arranged to rest in an inn by Changbo Qin Ji was with Genshin's group. The graceful and elegant Bai Yuntian came before Genshin and looked at him with a doting gaze. She said softly, Xiang mother still has some matters to attend to, so I'll be leaving first. You must properly entertain your guests. Do not neglect them in the slightest, do you understand? Bai Yuntian had a faint smile on her face. The joy in her heart had already reached its peak. These days, Jianqin had already brought her far too many surprises. He had even caused everyone in Changyang Prefecture to treat her differently. She had vaguely become the first lady of Changyang Prefecture who held true power. "Mother, go do your own things. I know what to do." In front of his mother, Jianqin was like an obedient child. Qin Ji, who had seen this scene for the first time, opened his mouth wide in disbelief. He looked at Jianqin as if he was looking at a complete stranger. After watching Bai Yuntian leave, Jianqin left the inn with Ming Dong, Qin Ji, and the others. They arrived at Changyang Prefecture, which was currently being rebuilt. The reconstruction of Changyang Prefecture proceeded very quickly. There were over 1,000 craftsmen taking turns to work day and night. All kinds of high-grade construction materials were also continuously transported from various places. This caused the originally ruined Changyang Prefecture to begin to take shape in just a few days. Although the rebuilt Changyang Prefecture did not change much, the area had expanded by more than 2 times. It even occupied a street that was not bustling with activity. Qin Ji looked around the rebuilt Changyang Prefecture and asked, "Jianqin, is this your home?" Jianqin nodded and said, "Yes, this is my home." However, it was destroyed by the people of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom a few days ago. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom is too hateful. They absolutely cannot be forgiven. "Jianqin, when do you plan to go on a crusade against the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom?" Qin Ji's expression became serious. "After the Eastern Sword Legion has all arrived, we will immediately set off for the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom," Jianqin said without hesitation. "Changyang Shoten, I hope you can inform my father about this matter," Princess Yu suddenly said, looking at Jianqin with eyes full of hidden bitterness. "Hee, Princess Yu does not need to worry. Someone has already informed His Majesty about this matter before us. I believe His Majesty the King will be here soon," Jianqin said with a chuckle. Princess Yu curled her lips. She was clearly very dissatisfied with Jianqin's reply. After a moment of silence, she spoke again. "Changyang Shoten, let me go with you to go on a crusade against the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom this time." Princess Yu also knew that Jianqin was the backbone of this large group. As long as he nodded in agreement, even her father's objection would be useless. Hearing this, Jianqin frowned slightly. He looked at Princess Yu's delicate appearance and said with a serious expression, "This time there will definitely be a bloody scene. You have never experienced such a scene before. Can you take it?" Princess Yu's bright eyes met Jianqin's gaze without the slightest fear. She said with a firm tone, "It is precisely because I have never experienced it that I want to go and experience it. No matter what, there is a first time for everything. Moreover, I believe that this will also be a kind of training for my heart." All right. Jianqin could not find a reason to reject Princess Yu's words. Furthermore, Princess Yu was right. The bloody battles on the battlefield were indeed a kind of training for some girls. Outside Lore City, 2 middle-aged men were riding on 2 Class 3 magical beasts as they slowly advanced towards the city ahead. One of them was a man with a bear-like waist and a tiger's back, while the other was a middle-aged man with a rather scholarly appearance. The man with a bear-like waist and a tiger's back was holding a roasted chicken in his hand and chewing it in big bites. His mouth was covered in grease as he said in a muffled voice, "That should be Lore City ahead. After walking for so long, we finally arrived here. I am so tired." "That's right. We are about to reach Lore City. You should wipe off the grease on your mouth. After all, this is a large city. You should pay attention to your image." The middle-aged man looked at the man's greasy face and could not help but speak up. "I understand." The man with a bear-like waist and a tiger's back hurriedly tore off all the meat on the roasted chicken and chewed it in big bites. Then he casually threw the roasted chicken to the side of the road and took out a handkerchief from his space belt to wipe off the grease on his mouth. These 2 people were Senior and Yun Zhang. The two of them had slowed down their pace as soon as they entered the kingdom of Jesson. They walked and stopped along the way and walked like this for several days before finally arriving at Lore City. When the two of them approached Lore City, Senior and suddenly discovered the Eastern deity Sword Legion not too far away. He said in surprise, "Yunjiang, look, there is actually an army camp over there." Hearing this, Yunjiang also looked over. Indeed, he discovered a large group of people 5 kilometers to the side, roughly estimating that there were at least 50 to 60,000 people. Many tents had already been set up in the surroundings. However, when Yunjiang's gaze fell on the flag fluttering in the wind, his expression suddenly changed. He cried out in surprise, "How is this possible? They are actually the army of the Qin Empire." "What? The Qin Empire? Yunjiang, are you mistaken? The Qin Empire is so far away from here. How could their army have come all the way here?" Senior and asked in disbelief. "It can't be wrong. That is clearly the flag of the Qin Empire. It can't be fake," Yunjiang said with a serious expression. "Forget it. Who cares what country it is? It has nothing to do with us. Let's hurry up and enter the city." The two of them came to the entrance of Lore City and lined up to enter the city. They discovered that Lore City was very strict with the inspection of people entering the city. Everyone who entered the city, no matter who they were, had to be stopped and questioned before they were allowed to leave. "Entering the city is so troublesome," Senior and grumbled impatiently behind them. "The kingdom of Jesson hasn't been very peaceful recently, especially since something happened to Lore City a few days ago." "It makes sense that the security is tight," Yunjiang explained. Chapter 487. I'm Senior and he's Yunjiang. We've obviously entered the city to look for someone. Senior and did not doubt him at all. However, the soldiers who heard these two names were immediately shocked. Someone immediately called out, "We've found them. They're Senior and Yunjiang. Quick, go inform the city, Lord's estate." Hearing this, a few soldiers immediately climbed onto their magical beast mounts and ran into the city. The soldiers' reactions stunned Senior and Yunjiang. The two of them did not understand what was going on. Seeing the soldiers running into the city on their magical beast mounts, a gleam of light flashed through Yunjiang's eyes. He immediately charged forward with a gust of wind. With his full strength as an Earth Saint Master, he easily caught up to the soldiers on their magical beasts. He directly punched their mounts and killed them. The soldiers on them also rolled off their mounts in an extremely wretched manner. "Speak clearly. What's going on? It's our first time in the kingdom of Jesson, and we haven't offended anyone. Who would spend so much effort to find the two of us?" Yunjiang said in a deep voice as he stood in the center of the city gates. A tremendous presence radiated from his body. The situation here had alarmed quite a few soldiers. Immediately, a large group of armored soldiers hurriedly ran down from the city walls and surrounded Yunjiang. On the city walls, powerful crossbow carts were also fully drawn. The arrowheads were aimed at Yunjiang, ready to fire at any time. Senior and's face also became stern. He stomped his foot on the ground and leapt into the air. He passed by the soldiers surrounding Yunjiang and arrived beside him. They stood together and faced off against the surrounding soldiers. "What's going on? Who's causing trouble down there?" A deep voice rang out from the city walls. The commander of the city guards, Tu Fu, stood on the city walls and looked down. He spoke expressionlessly, but a cold light flickered in his eyes. A few soldiers who had been interrogating Senior and Yunjiang hurriedly ran over. They hurriedly stopped the two sides. "Don't misunderstand. We're all on the same side. We're all on the same side." Then a soldier hurriedly reported to Tu Fu, who was standing high up on the city gate tower, reporting to the commander-in-chief, "These two are Senior Physician and Yunjiang." "Doctor and Yunjiang," Tu Fu muttered in a low voice. Soon after, his expression changed. His expression immediately became solemn as he shouted, "Everyone back down. Do not be rude. The soldiers surrounding senior physician and Yunjung retreated like a receding tide. In the blink of an eye, they were all gone. The originally tense atmosphere also relaxed following the departure of this group of soldiers. However, this left senior physician and Yunjung puzzled. No one knew what was going on. Tu Fu had already arrived in front of the two. He cupped his hands and smiled warmly. So the two of you are Doctor and Yunjung. You have finally appeared. We have been looking for you for several days. Who are you? Why are you looking for me? The two of us don't seem to know you. Doctor and couldn't hold back his curiosity and asked. Tu Fu chuckled and said, Actually, it's not us who's looking for you. The one who's looking for you, too, is the fourth young master of Changyang Prefecture. Yun Zheng's brows furrowed slightly. The fourth young master of Changyang Prefecture. Could it be the Changyang Shoten who has been the talk of the town recently? That's right. It is indeed the fourth young master of Changyang Shoten. If the two of you are really the people the fourth young master is looking for, then you will definitely know the fourth young master. Tu Fu smiled and explained patiently to the two of them. What Changyang Shoten? You've probably got the wrong person. I don't even know that Changyang Shoten. Dr. An's face was gloomy. This. Tu Fu hesitated. Judging from Dr. and Yun Zheng's expressions, it was obvious that they didn't know Changyang Shoten. This made him wonder if he had really found the wrong person. Yun Zheng frowned slightly and thought for a while. Suddenly his eyes flashed and he said in a low voice, Dr. An, do you think this Changyang Shoten could be Jianchen? Dr. An was slightly taken aback before his eyes lit up. He exclaimed, Yes, it must be Jianchen. It must be him. Because it was Jianchen who asked us to come to Lore City, only he knows our names. Hearing this, a wide smile appeared on Tu Fu's face again. He said, Both of you, the fourth young master lives in Changyang Prefecture. Allow me to lead the way for the two of you. Following this, Tu Fu personally led the way for Dr. An and Yunjung, bringing them to Changyang Prefecture. When Dr. An and Yunjung arrived, Jianchen, Mingdong, and the others were inspecting the rebuilt Changyang Prefecture. Soon the two sides met. Hey, Jianchen, it really is you. I didn't think that the Changyang Xiangtian who has been the talk of the town would actually be you. As soon as the two sides met, Dr. An opened his mouth and laughed loudly. He was obviously very happy. Yunjung, on the other hand, was much calmer. He stood to one side without saying anything, but his heart was in turmoil. This was because the two of them had heard many legends about the fourth young master of the Changyang clan on their way here. The two of them had snorted disdainfully at this 21-year-old heaven Saint Master more than once. Since they had made friends at the mercenary tournament, everyone was naturally happy to see each other again. Jianchen immediately ordered the inn's waiter to prepare a banquet to welcome Dr. An and Yunjung. The two of them had spent half a year, crossing over 1,000,000 kilometers to get here. This touched Jianchen very much. Jianchen, I never thought that in just half a year, your strength would have reached the level of a heaven saint master. This is just too unbelievable. It looks like you've benefited a lot from the sacred land. Dr. An mumbled with a piece of roasted meat in his mouth. He was also amazed that Jianchen could become a heaven saint master. Haha, the sacred land is indeed a very good place. However, my breakthrough to heaven saint master was not entirely due to the sacred land. There was something else, Jianchen said vaguely. He did not explain too clearly. The few of them chatted very happily at the table. They all talked about some of the things they had experienced in the past. Princess Yu, who sat there silently, also gained a deeper understanding of Jianchen from everyone's conversation. She learned more about Jianchen's past. Very soon night arrived. A few powerful auras rapidly approached from the distance. They soon stopped outside the inn where the people of the Changyang Prefecture were staying. Jianchen and the imperial advisors of the Qin Empire immediately walked out of the inn. They saw the king of the kingdom of Jessen, other than Xiaotian, the principal of the Kargath Academy, Kafir, and Yiming, who was stationed in the imperial palace, were also with him. I never thought that the king would come so quickly. He's much faster than I expected, Genshin thought to himself. After the king, Kafir and Yiming exchanged a few pleasantries with everyone else. They were invited to the inn by Changwuji. However, most of their gazes were fixed on Genshin. In the past few days, Genshin had surprised them more and more. They never thought that in just a few days he would bring back 8 Heaven Saint Masters and a powerful army from the Qin Empire. This lineup shocked the king. Genshin's influence in the Qin Empire was much greater than he had imagined. In a spacious and luxurious room of the inn, the 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire, Qin Wuming, and his sons had all come to meet the king of the kingdom of Jessen. Although their statuses were much higher than the king of a small country, they were completely giving face to Genshin. At the same time, they had also found out that the king of the kingdom of Jessen was Genshin's future father-in-law. Just this identity alone was enough for them to treat him seriously. This was because they all understood that in the near future, the newly appointed imperial protector was fated to become a saint ruler, or even higher. A 21-year-old Heaven Saint Master was definitely unprecedented on the Tian-Yuan continent. No one could predict his future. The king obviously understood that the reason why everyone treated him so courteously was all because of Genshin. He immediately felt extremely gratified and proud of the wise decision he had made all those years ago. If he had not decided on this marriage when he was young, he probably would not have been as glorious as he was now, able to stand on equal footing with so many important people of the Qin Empire as the king of a small country. After the king humbly said a few words of praise to everyone, his gaze finally landed on Genshin. He smiled and said, "Dear nephew, may I ask when you will be preparing to attack the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom? The 500,000 soldiers of the Eastern Swords Legion will all be sent over tomorrow. Once the army is gathered, we will immediately set off," Genshin replied. Good. I'd like to see how the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom will be able to stop the elite armies and experts of the Qin Empire. Dear nephew, this matter is no small matter to my kingdom of Jessen. I plan on going to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom with you. What do you think? The king spoke to Genshin in a completely negotiating manner. Right now, Genshin's status was far greater than the king's, and the power he possessed was not something the kingdom of Jessen could compare to. Genshin obviously would not reject the king's request. He nodded without any hesitation. Although the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was not weak, so many experts from the Qin Empire had come this time, so it was still possible to protect a few people. Chapter 488. The next morning, a large group of influential figures gathered in the inn to discuss how to deal with the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. The people who expressed their opinions the most were Genshin, and the king. Qin Ji also chimed in occasionally. As for the 10 imperial advisors and 3 generals of the Qin Empire, they did not say anything. Their mission was only to contribute their strength. As for how to deal with the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, the decision was still in Genshin's hands. At this moment, a soldier of the Eastern Sword Legion ran in and knelt on one knee. Reporting to the general, the Eastern Sword Legion's 500,000 troops have all been assembled. I didn't expect them to be assembled so quickly. It's much faster than I expected. Qin Ji chuckled. Qin Wuming looked at Genshin and said, "Imperial Protector, what should we do next?" Genshin stood up and said, "Set out immediately." Next, a group of people rode out of Lore City on their magical beast mounts. This time, the army was accompanied by the 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire, Qin Wuming and his sons, the 3rd Prince Qin Ji, Changyang Ba, Genshin, Princess Yu, Mingdong de Gafeng, as well as Dr. N.N. Yunzhang, who had just arrived not long ago. In addition, the king of the kingdom of Jessen had also personally led the army. Along with him were 2 experts from the kingdom of Jessen. They were the dean of Kargath Academy, Kafir, and Yiming, who had stayed behind to guard the palace. The group of people left Lore City. From afar, they could see that a large group of people had already gathered a few kilometers away from the city. A vast aura filled the surrounding space. Even though they were far away, they could clearly feel a huge pressure that affected Lore City. All the mercenaries and merchants entering and leaving Lore City couldn't help but look sideways. Endless discussions could be heard, but very few people dared to go over and take a look. A group of people, led by Jianqin, all rode their magical beast mounts to the front of the army. They saw the 500,000 soldiers of the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion, standing in a neat square formation. Every one of them was expressionless, but their gazes were piercingly cold. Beside every soldier, there was a huge green wolf that was over 3 meters long lying on the ground. The Qin Empire had a specialized breeding ground for magical beasts. As one of the most elite legions of the Qin Empire, every soldier of the Eastern Sword Legion was equipped with a magical beast. These magical beasts had only arrived through the spatial gate. Seeing this scene, Jianqin's eyes flashed with surprise. He didn't expect that in such a short period of time, not only had the 500,000 soldiers arrived through the spatial gate in advance, but they had also brought along so many magical beasts. What surprised him even more was that the Qin Empire was able to train these savage magical beasts into such obedient mounts. He couldn't help but admire the methods of the Qin Empire from the bottom of his heart. The deputy commander of the Eastern Sword Legion, Qin Wuming, came to the front of the army and shouted, "All soldiers, get on your mounts and set off!" The 500,000 soldiers of the Eastern Sword Legion didn't say a word. They jumped onto the magical beast mounts, lying at their feet in an orderly manner. Then they were led away by Jianqin and the rest. The entire army marched toward the border of the kingdom of Jessin in a grandiose manner. At this moment, a large group of people had gathered at the gate of Lore City. Everyone's eyes were filled with curiosity as they looked at the army in silver-white armor. They were whispering to each other, "Who are these people? How can they emit such a powerful aura? Even I feel a chill down my spine. Could this be some large-scale mercenary group doing something big? How is that possible? Let's not talk about the fact that our Jessin kingdom doesn't have such a powerful mercenary group. Even the surrounding kingdoms don't have such a large mercenary group. Look at this long line. There must be at least a few 100,000 people. This should be an army. But when did the Jessin kingdom have such a valiant army? Just the aura they're emitting is enough to make me tremble in fear. They're like ferocious beasts. An army like this is too frightening. The kingdom of Jessin doesn't seem to have such an army. Look at their flag. It's not the flag of the kingdom of Jessin at all. However, there is the word Qin on the flag. Recently, the imperial advisor of the Qin Empire appeared in the kingdom of Jessin. Do you think this is the army of the Qin Empire? Do you see the magical beasts riding beside them? They are all Class 2 and Class 3 magical beasts. I even noticed quite a number of Class 4 magical beasts. Oh my God! Just these magical beasts alone are enough to make them a terrifying force. Look at the few people at the front of the line. Isn't that man in a white robe the king of the kingdom of Jessin? His Majesty is leading such a large army into battle. Is he going to deal with the allied army of the 4 kingdoms? A few days ago, the experts of the kingdom of Heavenly Eagle came to the kingdom of Jessin and destroyed a large part of the palace. I think His Majesty is leading the army to deal with the kingdom of Heavenly Eagle. The advance of an army of 500,000 deterred everyone. The gates of Lore City were completely blocked, and there were already over 1,000 people gathered here to watch the soldiers of the Eastern Divine Sword Legion slowly leave. Discussions could be heard everywhere, incessantly ringing in the ears. On the city walls, the city lord of Lore City, the members of the other 3 clans, as well as many other people of status, had all gathered here. Everyone stared blankly at the vast army in front of them. Their faces were slack. At this point, Everyone understood in their hearts that the kingdom of Jessen was able to climb up to the Qin Empire because of the fourth young master of Changyang Prefecture. Now that they had the support of the Qin Empire, the kingdom of Jessen would soon become the dominant figure in this region. The army of 500,000 began to speed up after they got on the official road. As everyone was riding on magical beasts that were good at speed, they ran like the wind and lightning. Wherever the army passed, a large amount of yellow dust would be kicked up from the ground. Smoke and dust filled the sky and covered the sun. If it were not for the fact that the Eastern Divine Sword Legion was a group of well-trained soldiers, just the extremely high speed of the army would have caused chaos in the formation of the army. How could they still be in such good condition? This time Jianqin and the 15 Heaven Saint Masters in the army gave up on flying. Instead, they all rode on magical beasts. With Jianqin in the lead, they quickly led the army to the south in a triangular formation. The kingdom of Heavenly Eagle was to the south of the kingdom of Jessen. The army had to pass through the southern fort to reach the Antil's kingdom. After that, they would have to pass through the territories of 2 kingdoms to reach the kingdom of Heavenly Eagle. The journey was extremely long. Even with the speed of a Heaven Saint Master, it would take them 2 days to reach the kingdom of Heavenly Eagle. On the other hand, the army would need 10 days to reach the kingdom of Heavenly Eagle. After 2 days of rapid travel, the army of 500,000 arrived at the southern fort. When the general in charge of the fort received the news, he had already led his men to wait 10 kilometers away. The army rested for a while at the southern fort. Then, another army of 500,000 from the kingdom of Jessen joined in. They mingled with the Eastern Divine Sword Legion of the Qin Empire. Within the army of 1,000,000, 2 flags flew. One was the flag of the Qin Empire, while the other was the flag of the kingdom of Jessen. This was something that the king of the kingdom of Jessen and Jianqin had discussed long ago. This was also to announce to the outside world that the relationship between the kingdom of Jessen and the Qin Empire had reached a level of closeness. This action was also to intimidate the surrounding kingdoms. The 1,000,000-strong army headed south, approaching the Antilles kingdom in the south. Wherever the army passed, the merchants and mercenaries would make way for them, leaving behind all sorts of discussions. At the same time, all sorts of information was passed into the hands of the various factions in the surrounding kingdoms. The king of the Antilles kingdom also received news that the army of 1,000,000 from the kingdom of Jessen was heading towards his kingdom as soon as possible. When he saw the flag of the Qin Empire fluttering in the wind, the king immediately paled in fright. His entire body trembled, and he immediately called for a meeting with his ministers. In the imperial palace of the Antilles kingdom, several dozen ministers and civil and military officials were gathered in the discussion hall. The atmosphere was extremely heavy. I never thought that the relationship between the kingdom of Jessen and the Qin Empire would be even closer than we imagined. They've actually sent an army to reinforce the kingdom of Jessen. According to the information we've gathered in the past 2 days, 500,000 of them belong to the Qin Empire. They're the most elite troops. Every single one of them has a powerful magical beast as a mount. They're extremely powerful, and we don't know how many Heaven Saint Masters they have. Everyone, what do you think we should do? The king of the Antilles kingdom sat on his throne and spoke with a heavy voice. His face was extremely solemn, and his brows were furrowed with worry. Your Majesty, there's no need for us to worry. We've already surrendered to the kingdom of Jessen in the war back then, and we've even given them a large amount of compensation. It's basically a perfect solution to the problem. The kingdom of Jessen won't be able to cause us any more trouble. According to the information we received from our spies in the kingdom of Jessen 2 days ago, the kingdom of Jessen is most likely going to deal with the Heavenly Eagle kingdom. Our Antilles kingdom just happens to be between the kingdom of Jessen and the Antilles kingdom. So I'm certain that the kingdom of Jessen wants to go through our Antilles kingdom to reach the Heavenly Eagle kingdom, said an old general in armor. Your Majesty, I completely agree with old General Mu's opinion. The experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom caused trouble in the kingdom of Jesson a few days ago. Not only did they destroy the palace, but they even captured the king of the kingdom of Jesson. Without a doubt, this is a vicious slap to the face of the kingdom of Jesson. As a result, I also believe that the kingdom of Jesson is going to deal with the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and not our Antil's kingdom, so we can be at ease. Hearing the two's words, the Anless Kingdom's king sat on his throne and pondered for a while before nodding. My two beloved subjects, your words are very reasonable. Right now, the relationship between the Jesson Kingdom and the Qinhuang Kingdom is as close as brothers. We absolutely cannot afford to offend them, since they want to go through the Anless Kingdom to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Then the Anless Kingdom will open our doors wide and let them pass. Chapter 489. After traveling for a day and a half, the army of 1,000,000 from the kingdom of Jesson and the Qin Empire finally arrived at the fortress on the border of the Anless Kingdom. Just when the army was 20 kilometers away from the fortress, they saw a large group of people gathered in the distance. Several flags of the Anless Kingdom were planted in the ground, fluttering in the wind. Seeing the situation up ahead, Mingdong rode over to Gentian's side on his magical beast. He pointed up ahead and said, "Brother, look, there are actually people from the Anless Kingdom over there. Don't tell me they think we've come to attack them." Gentian had already observed the situation up ahead with his soul. He gently shook his head with a smile and said, No, they've come to receive us." "Receive us?" Mingdong was slightly surprised, but he soon understood. That makes sense. Looks like the deterrence of the Qin Empire's army really is extraordinary. They've actually scared the Anless Kingdom so much that they've come to receive us 10 kilometers away from the fortress. Of course. The Qin Empire is one of the 8 great nations of the Tianyuan continent. Their strength is unquestionable. A tiny kingdom like the Anless can't even compare to our kingdom of Jesson. So how can they not fear the Qin Empire? I believe that the king of the Anless Kingdom will be among the people who've come to receive us this time. The king of the kingdom of Jesson chuckled as he walked behind them. His face was filled with indescribable pride. As they chatted and laughed, they arrived 10 kilometers away from the fortress of the Anless Kingdom very soon. They were only 100 meters away from the group that had come to receive them. The king of the kingdom of Jesson had guessed correctly. The group that had come to receive them were all royalty, ministers, and armored generals of the Anless Kingdom. There were over 100 of them, and the leader was an old man in his 60s. He wore a crown and a dragon robe. He was the king of the Anless Kingdom. All of them looked exhausted. It was obvious that they had rushed over from the imperial palace and did not have time to rest. The Anless king stepped forward with a solemn expression, cupping his hands towards the army and saying, "This king is the Anless king, leading all the civil and military officials of the Qinhuang Kingdom to welcome the distinguished guests of the Qinhuang Kingdom. My Anless Kingdom warmly welcomes the distinguished guests of the Qinhuang Kingdom." As he spoke, the king of the Antilles Kingdom was also sizing up the crowd. Gentian, who was walking at the front, naturally caught his attention at first glance. He thought to himself, this person must be the person with the highest status in the Qin Empire. Immediately, King Alls looked at Gentian with undisguised respect. The advancing speed of the 1,000,000-strong army gradually slowed down, and they finally stopped when they were 20 meters away from the Antilles Kingdom. No one spoke. Gentian pondered for a moment, then turned to the king behind him and said softly, "Your Majesty, you go and negotiate with him." Good. The king's face was full of smiles, and he was incomparably happy. Gentian's actions were clearly raising his status. The king rode a rank 3 magical beast, the golden lion, and slowly walked forward to negotiate with King Anless. Seeing Gentian's actions, King Anless was even more certain of his thoughts. The young man walking at the front was the leader of this group, and his status in the Qin Empire had to be extremely high. The two sides quickly finished negotiating. The king did not appear to be very friendly with King Enless, and he only calmly stated that the army was going to pass through the Antilles Kingdom and head towards the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. King Enless had already guessed this. Not only did he not refuse, he even agreed. His attitude was so enthusiastic that it was as if he could not have asked for more. The king did not exchange too many pleasantries with King Enless. He then returned to the army, and the army continued to advance towards the fortress 10 kilometers away. Seeing that the army had already passed by him, King Enless had an anxious look on his face. He quickly ran up to Jianchen, who was walking at the front, and said respectfully, Your Majesty. King Enless knew that Jianchen represented the Qin Empire, and his status was probably even higher than the imperial advisor of the Qin Empire. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for such a person to come to the Enless Kingdom. He wanted to get closer to Jianchen and try to climb up the tree of the Qin Empire, just like the Kingdom of Jessen. However, he did not get his wish in the end. Jianchen did not even look at him. He gradually increased the speed of his magical beast mount. His shouts were quickly drowned out by the deafening sound of hooves, and he was left behind by the rapidly advancing army. Looking at the army that belonged to the Kingdom of Jessen and the army of the Qin Empire mixed together, King Enless let out a long sigh. He felt very fortunate that he had made the decision to surrender to the Kingdom of Jessen in time when the Kingdom of Jessen was at war with the Kingdom of Jessen. He had also given them a large amount of compensation and resolved the matter a step earlier. Otherwise, this army of 1,000,000 wouldn't be advancing towards the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, but would be directly attacking the Enless Kingdom instead. Although the Enless Kingdom had an army of over 10 million, the strength of its army was far from comparable to the Qin Empire, one of the 8 great nations of the continent. Even this army of 500,000 would be difficult to stop. Although many ants could bite an elephant to death, an elephant only needed to stomp a large group of ants to death. If one wanted to kill an elephant, who knew how many ants they would have to pay with their lives? This was especially so when they encountered a group of ferocious elephants. The price they would have to pay would be even more disastrous. The gates of the Enless Kingdom's fortress were already wide open. Jianchen rode his magical beast at the very front, leading the army of 1,000,000 into the Enless Kingdom's territory with the deafening sound of hooves. They then headed south, heading straight for the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. At this moment, within the palace of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, the king was sitting leisurely in the garden, playing chess with a white-haired old man with a ruddy complexion. At this moment, a personal guard hurriedly ran over from afar. He knelt on one knee and said, Your Majesty, this is an urgent secret letter from a spy. The king's gaze was fixed on the chessboard, not moving at all. He said, Give it to me. The personal guard immediately handed the letter to the king. The king casually tore open the seal and took out a piece of white paper with words written on it. A moment later, the king's expression changed drastically. The hand holding the letter trembled slightly. He muttered absent-mindedly, How is this possible? How is this possible? Noticing the king's expression, the ruddy old man also hesitated. He asked in confusion, Your Majesty, what happened? Why are you losing your composure like this? The king's face was slightly pale. He said in a deep voice, Bad news. The relationship between the Kingdom of Jessen and the Qin Empire is even closer than we thought. The Qin Empire has already sent out an army of 500,000 to join forces with the Kingdom of Jessen to form an army of 1,000,000. They are currently rushing towards our Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. What? The old man sitting across from the king turned pale with fright. He immediately shook his head and said, Impossible, this is definitely impossible. The distance between the Qin Empire and the Kingdom of Jessen is over 1,000,000 kilometers. It would take at least half a year for an army to get there. How could they arrive so quickly? Could it be that the Qin Empire already sent an army to the Kingdom of Jessen half a year ago? I'd rather believe it than not. Although it's a little exaggerated, the Qin Empire is still one of the 8 strongest countries on the continent. They are also the strongest of the 8, second only to the 3 empires. Who knows? They might have some special method that we don't know of to transport an army over. No, this is no small matter. It concerns the life and death of our heavenly eagle kingdom. I'll go ask Senior George to personally investigate this matter and see if the Qin Empire is truly involved. The king of the heavenly eagle kingdom no longer had the mood to play chess. He hurriedly left. Within the Antilles kingdom, the combined army of the kingdom of Jesson and the Qin Empire had already passed through the center of the Antilles kingdom after 2 days of travel. They were not far from the border fortress of the Antilles kingdom. The army of 1,000,000 was currently resting on a large plain. They formed a circle in groups of 3 to 5 and 8 rations to fill their stomachs. They had occupied an area of several dozen kilometers. The kingdom of Jesson had sent a 100-man squad to a city 20 kilometers ahead to purchase rations. This was to provide for the daily needs of the 500,000 soldiers of the kingdom of Jesson. Every soldier of the Qin Empire's Eastern Divine Sword Legion was given a space belt. There was a large amount of rations and water stored within, enough to last them for half a year. The kingdom of Jesson was not as wealthy as the Qin Empire. They could not afford a space belt for each of their 500,000 soldiers, so the rations they could bring with them were limited. After resting for 2 hours, the army set off once more. Very soon, they left the Antilles kingdom's borders and walked through a barren land. At this moment, a gleam of light flashed through Genshin's eyes. He raised his head slightly to look at the sky. All he saw was a vast expanse of whiteness. Thick layers of clouds had completely blocked out the sun. There was nothing but whiteness. The dozen or so Heaven Saint Masters behind Genshin seemed to have sensed something. They all raised their heads to look at the sky. Their calm eyes suddenly sharpened. Genshin sneered. "It's the people from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Looks like they've come to investigate our situation. Xiao Tian, go invite them down." "Yes, sir," Xiao Tian replied. He immediately rose into the air and shot into the sky like a bolt of lightning. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared into the vast expanse of white clouds. Boom! However, in the next moment, a heavy rumble rang out from the sky. Surging waves of energy wreaked havoc in the surroundings, dispersing a large portion of the thick clouds in the surroundings. Flames filled the sky, causing it to be dyed red. After the clouds dispersed, the scene in the sky appeared before everyone's eyes. A red and a blue speck of light that was even smaller than an ant collided with each other in the sky. Every time they collided, there would be a heavy rumble. After a few rounds, the blue speck of light fell from the sky. The red speck of light was hot on its heels. Very soon, the 2 specks of light gradually became clear. They were 2 figures. As soon as the blue figure fell, he stabilized himself in midair and then suddenly accelerated, charging towards the 1,000,000-strong army below. Chapter 490. Over a dozen Heaven Saint Masters stood in front of the army. Their tremendous presence surged forward like a tidal wave, forming an extremely great deterrent. The blue figure that was originally charging toward the army came to a sudden halt. Xiao Tian, whose body was exuding the power of fire elements, had already caught up from behind and engaged in a fierce battle with that figure once again. Every time the 2 of them exchanged blows, a powerful energy shockwave would erupt, shaking the heavens and the earth. After a dozen or so short exchanges, the blue figure was injured by Xiao Tian. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell from the sky once more. In the end, he heavily crashed into the empty ground 100 meters in front of the army, creating a huge crater. Xiao Tian shot through the sky like a fire-red meteor. In the end, he hovered 10 meters above the ground. His eyes were sharp as he stared at the figure below emotionlessly. He did not continue to attack. A series of coughs rang out from the man's mouth. The expert that had been struck down by Xiao Tian climbed up from the ground with some difficulty. His gaze toward Shao Tian was filled with some fear. The dozen or so powerhouses hovering in the air also descended one after another, sitting back down on their magical beast mounts. Jianqin controlled his mount to slowly advance. In the end, he stopped 10 meters away from the expert. He looked at him with a smile. "Sir George, I never thought that we would meet again so soon. Looks like we really are fated." George stared at Jianqin sternly. His face was filled with fear. What had happened in the imperial palace of the kingdom of Jessin was still fresh in his mind. His saint weapon had been effortlessly destroyed by this young man. The fourth young master of the Changyang prefecture, Changyang Shoten, George said with a heavy voice. His face was extremely ugly. Jianqin chuckled. "Correct, that's me. I never thought that Sir George would recognize me." George looked at Shao Tian behind him and the Heaven Saint Masters who had returned to their mounts. He said with a heavy voice, "Changyang Shoten, I've come this time to see the representative of the Qin Empire. Please move aside." "Sir George, do you think you have the right to do that?" Jianqin faintly smiled as he looked down at George from his mount. George's expression changed slightly. He said, "Of course I don't have the right, but it's not up to you to decide. What right do you have to stop me?" Jianqin looked at George with a mocking expression. He smiled. "If Sir George refuses to accept this, why don't we fight again? Let's see if I have the right to do that." George's face paled when he heard Jianqin's words. His chest heaved up and down. Clearly he was quite angry. This was the first time he had been looked down upon by someone of the younger generation. Even though he was furious, he did not dare to show it. He had already witnessed Jianqin's strength in the imperial palace of the kingdom of Jessin. He was definitely not Jianqin's opponent. If he acted rashly, he would only be asking to be humiliated. George directly ignored Jianqin and looked at the army behind Jianqin. He clasped his hands and said, "I am George, and I represent the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. I hope to speak with the representative of the Qin Empire." No one replied to George. The 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire, Qin Wuming and his sons, and the third prince, Qin Ji, did not speak. This was because the representative of the Qin Empire that George spoke of was right in front of him. It was just that he did not know about it. Princess Yu finally could not hold back her laughter when she saw this ridiculing scene. Her bright eyes were already curved into crescents as she stared at Jianqin's imposing figure in a daze. Jianqin also chuckled. "Sir George, you should go back and inform the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Tell him to prepare himself and see just how powerful the most elite soldiers of the Qin Empire are." The most elite soldiers of the Qin Empire. George's heart sank. He looked at the majestic army in front of him in disbelief. He never thought that the Qin Empire would not only send out an army, but also the most elite one. George stood there with a gloomy expression. In the end, he turned around and left without a word. His heart was extremely heavy. Let's continue on our way. The army continued to advance. They quickly marched through the endless plains for an entire day. By noon of the second day, they had arrived at the second kingdom they had to pass through, the Persian kingdom. The Persian kingdom, like the Antilles kingdom, had long since received news that the Qin Empire's army was going to pass through. The king had led a group of nobles and officials to wait at the border fortress for a long time. Moreover, the welcoming ceremony was much grander than the one held by the Antilles kingdom. The tall walls of the fortress were decorated with lanterns and colored banners. Below, there are thousands of people beating gongs and drums. They formed a 3-kilometer-long welcoming line along the main road. The million-strong army of the Kingdom of Jessin and the Qin Empire slowly slowed down. In the face of the warm welcome from the Persian kingdom, Jianqin only smiled and left the negotiation to the king of the Kingdom of Jessin. It was most appropriate for him to appear in such a situation. The attitude of the king of the Kingdom of Jessin toward the Persian kingdom was much warmer, unlike the cold attitude of the Antilles kingdom. The negotiation between the two kings was very simple. It was nothing more than a few pleasantries. During the conversation, the king of the Persian kingdom stated that he wanted to form an alliance with the kingdom of Jesson. His attitude was very sincere. However, the king of the kingdom of Jesson smoothly rejected the offer. Now that the kingdom of Jesson had climbed up the big tree that was the Qin Empire, their status could be said to have soared. Their future was just around the corner. Normally, the king of the kingdom of Jesson did not pay much attention to them. After the negotiation between the two sides, the king of the kingdom of Jesson once again set out with the army. They passed through the borders of the Persian kingdom and headed straight for the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. In the palace of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, the injured George had already returned. He was currently recounting what he had seen to the king. "Your Majesty, the news can't be wrong. That really is the army of the Qin Empire. Moreover, it's the most elite army of the Qin Empire. There are even a dozen Heaven Saint Masters accompanying them. The situation is very bad," George said with a solemn expression. His brows were tightly knitted together. "Sigh." The king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom sighed. "It's all because I was too impulsive back then. Minister Che's information was wrong. Not only is the relationship between the kingdom of Jesson and the Qin Empire completely different from what Minister Che said, their relationship is extremely close. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent their most elite soldiers to assist the kingdom of Jesson. Your Majesty, what should we do now? Should we surrender to them or fight to the death? If we fight to the death, we don't have enough Heaven Saint Masters. We won't be able to stop the enemy's experts at all. Moreover, the imperial advisors of the Qin Empire are all very powerful. Last time, they were able to utterly defeat 10 of our experts with just 6 of them. Almost none of them made it back. This time, there's Chongyang Shoten in the army. Although he's still young, the mysterious energy in his hands is definitely the bane of all Heaven Saint Masters. Last time, in the palace of the kingdom of Jesson, he defeated me in less than 5 moves. George's face was filled with worry. As soon as he mentioned Chongyang Shoten, a deep fear appeared in his eyes. The strength and terror of the sword spirits had already instilled fear in this Heaven Saint Master. The king gently shook his head and rubbed his temples. He said weakly, "Surrendering is definitely not a solution. The Qin Empire's army came from so far away. If surrendering could make them retreat, they wouldn't need to bring their army over. They could just send a few of their most powerful imperial advisors. Why go through so much trouble? It looks like the kingdom of Jesson wants to destroy our Heavenly Eagle Kingdom this time. We can't stop them, and surrendering isn't a solution either. What should we do?" George sighed. "Senior George N., go and inform the experts in the kingdom. Tell them what happened and have them all rush to the stronghold. I will think of a way to make the Qin Huang kingdom retreat." The king lay on the dragon, thrown tiredly with his eyes closed. George hesitated for a moment before nodding an end. "All right, I'll go inform them right now." After George left, His Majesty slowly opened his tightly shut eyes again. He looked at the resplendent hall and muttered, "I didn't expect that a wrong decision back then would cause me to lose this empire. The empire that my ancestors had painstakingly built with so much effort has to be given to someone else." The king closed his eyes in pain. After a long while he said, "Men." "Your Majesty." A personal guard quickly ran up to him. "Go and inform Senior Longchin that I agree to their request. They need to help our Heavenly Eagle Kingdom overcome this crisis." After saying that, the king seemed to have lost all his strength. He was paralyzed on his throne. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. By now, the news of the Jesson Kingdom and Qin Huang Kingdom's alliance preparing to attack the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was known by many. This news had spread far and wide within 100,000 li radius, becoming a hot topic of discussion. Discussions about the Jesson Kingdom and Heavenly Eagle Kingdom could be heard everywhere in the surrounding kingdoms. During this period of time, the atmosphere in the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had become extremely tense. Although the Jesson Kingdom and Qin Huang Kingdom only had 1,000,000 soldiers, which was nothing in front of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's army of over 10 million, everyone knew that the Qin Huang Kingdom's army was much stronger than the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's. Even if the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom only had 500,000 soldiers, they would still be able to deal a heavy blow to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. If the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom dared to destroy the Qin Huang Kingdom's army of 500,000, then the Qin Huang Kingdom's next army might be 1,000,000 soldiers or even more. In the face of the Qin Empire's army, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom clearly had no intention of surrendering. They had been mobilizing their troops for the past few days, gathering their elite troops from the other 3 directions to the fortress that the Kingdom of Jesson and the Qin Empire's army was about to reach. After a few days of preparation, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had already gathered 6,000,000 soldiers at the northern fortress. Almost half of the kingdom's strength was placed here. In addition, all the experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom were present. At the northern fortress of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, a dozen experts and a few armored generals stood there with serious expressions. They stared ahead with bright eyes, as if waiting for something to arrive. Chapter 491. The gates of the northern fortress of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom were tightly shut. Countless fist-sized holes had appeared on the walls, each of which had a crossbow bolt as thick as an arm protruding from it. The walls were filled with soldiers, and each of them had a magic crystal cannon mounted on them. The black muzzles of the cannons were pointed straight ahead, and the atmosphere was extremely oppressive. 3 kilometers away from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, the 1,000,000-strong army of the Kingdom of Jesson and the Qin Empire had already spread out in all directions to prevent the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's magic crystal cannons from firing at them. The soldiers were as dense as ants, covering the entire empty space. However, the soldiers of the Qin Empire and the Kingdom of Jesson had already split into 2 camps. The Kai clan's Eastern Divine Sword Legion stood at the front, while the Kingdom of Jesson's 500,000 soldiers stood at the back. After all, the Eastern Divine Sword Legion was the main force in this attack on the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. The Kingdom of Jesson and its 500,000 soldiers were only there to act as a facade. After all, the Kingdom of Jesson had just been baptized by the flames of war not too long ago. Its national strength was at an all-time low, and it could no longer endure any more setbacks. With Jianqin in the lead, the 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire, as well as Qin Wuming and his 2 sons, slowly approached the fortress on their magical beast mounts. Kaffir and Yiming were responsible for the safety of the king and Princess Yu. The Qin Empire was the only one contributing to this battle. The Kingdom of Jesson didn't need to do anything at all. As Jian Chen's group approached, 11 experts appeared on the walls of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's fortress. All of them stared at the 14 people slowly approaching on their magical beast mounts with stern expressions. George stared at Jianqin fearfully and said in a deep voice, "The young man at the very front is the 4th young master of the Changyang Prefecture, Changyang Shoten. Everyone be careful." George's wounds had completely healed under the combined efforts of several radiant Saint Masters. He seemed to be glowing right now. The experts standing on both sides of George nodded solemnly. They had already received George's warning. They knew that the young man walking at the front was young, but he was very difficult to deal with. Jianqin led the 13 experts to a stop 500 meters away from the fortress. With their strength as Heaven Saint Masters, the magic crystal cannons and crossbow bolts used to deal with the ordinary soldiers of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom posed no threat to them at all. They directly treated them like they were nothing. Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, I'll give you 10 breaths of time to consider. Those who surrender will not be killed, but those who resist will be killed without mercy. Jianqin bellowed out. His voice was like thunder, reverberating in the surroundings for a long time. With a rumble, The sound waves actually caused the fortress of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom to tremble slightly. A thick layer of dust fell from the fortress. The experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom did not want to fall behind either. Someone immediately yelled out, "Kingdom of Jesson, you may have the support of the Qin Empire, but our Heavenly Eagle Kingdom is not afraid of you. If you have the courage, then attack the fortress. Our entire army of 5 million has been waiting for you for a long time." A cold light flickered through Genshin's eyes as a sneer appeared on his lips. He said, "Commander Qin Wuming, give the order." "Yes, Imperial Protector." Qin Wuming clasped his hands in response. He then raised his hands high and yelled, "Eastern Divine Sword Legion, attack the fortress! Kill!" As soon as Qin Wuming's voice fell, a shocking battle cry came from behind him. For a moment, the sound of hooves was deafening. The 500,000 soldiers of the Eastern Divine Sword Legion moved at the same time. They were like a group of wild horses that had broken free from their reins. They were like a flood that rushed toward the fortress of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Among them, the most eye-catching was a small team of around 500 people. They ran at the very front of the army, leaving the army behind them far behind. This squad of 500 people was the most elite squad in the Eastern Deity Sword Legion. They were completely made up of Earth Saint Masters. They were specifically tasked with scaling the walls of the enemy during sieges and destroying the magic crystal cannons and crossbows that the enemy had set up on the walls. "Fire the magic crystal cannons! Fire the fortified crossbows!" At the same time, the general of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom also gave the order. His voice that was filled with vigor entered the ears of every soldier. Immediately, the muffled sound of cannons rang out from the walls. Several hundred balls of fire with powerful energy waves smashed toward the soldiers of the Eastern Divine Sword Legion. Several thousand fortified crossbows turned into a black cloud as they shot out from the walls with ear-piercing sounds. These fortified crossbows could only kill Great Saint Masters. They were not much of a threat to Earth Saint Masters. The 500 elites running at the very front all had the strength of an Earth Saint Master. They quickly waved the saint weapons in their hands and blocked all the fortified crossbows that were shot at them. Although there were a lot of crossbow bolts, thousands of them, the attack area was very large, so they were scattered. After a wave of bolts was fired, even the speed of the 500 elite troops did not slow down in the slightest. Boom, 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 boom. A series of violent explosions rang out as several hundred energy shells fired from the magic crystal cannons bombarded the ground, creating a deep crater. The soldiers of the Eastern Divine Sword Legion were already prepared for the magic crystal cannons. Everyone had spread out long ago, keeping a certain distance between each other. As a result, the terrifying destructive power and area of effect of the magic crystal cannons were not displayed at all. This led to a wave of attacks that had a completely disproportionate effect. Only a dozen or so soldiers of the Eastern Divine Sword Legion were injured. The advance of the 500 people of the Eastern Divine Sword Legion was simply unstoppable. The magical beasts they were riding were Class 3 and Class 4 magical beasts that were good at running. In just a few breaths of time, they had crossed several kilometers and arrived at the walls of the fortress. Then the magical beasts carried their riders and leaped up at the same time. Their sharp claws easily tore through the layer of iron outside the walls as they rapidly climbed up the walls. "Pour the oil!" The general of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom immediately ordered. Immediately, several hundred barrels of boiling oil were carried up the walls by the soldiers in an attempt to stop the enemy from climbing up the walls. However, before they could pour the oil, an ear-piercing sound pierced through the air from afar. Countless half-meter-long crossbows were shot from the front, riddling their bodies with thousands of holes. Not only did the oil not pour down, but because of the death of these soldiers, it lost its support and fell down one by one on the walls. The boiling oil spilled out, causing a raging fire to erupt on the walls. Thick black smoke rose up from the walls, as if to prove the tragedy of the battle. Below the walls, many of the Kai clan soldiers were already half kneeling on the ground. Each of them held a small crossbow in their hands and shot arrows at the people on the walls from afar, providing cover for the 500 elite soldiers. The small crossbows that were only half a meter long were continuously shot out from their hands, killing all the soldiers that tried to stop the 500 elite soldiers. The 500 elite soldiers quickly climbed up the 100-meter-tall walls of the fortress on their magical beast mounts. Then, they waved their saint weapons and mercilessly slaughtered the soldiers that were controlling the magic crystal cannons and crossbows. In just a moment, miserable cries rang out from the walls. The originally orderly soldiers of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom were immediately thrown into chaos with the addition of the 500 elite soldiers from the Qin Empire. In front of an Earth Saint Master, even a great Saint Master would become extremely weak. The weaker ones would appear even more insignificant. Only other Earth Saint Masters could stop the 500 elite soldiers from advancing, but that was only in a one-on-one situation. Moreover, the chances of victory were extremely slim. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's fortress was in a state of chaos. The hundreds of magic crystal cannons and crossbow carts had gradually stopped their attacks. In the end, not a single magic crystal cannon or crossbow bolt could be fired. The powerful defensive equipment had become mere decorations. At the same time, the 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire all flew into the sky. Their powerful presences firmly locked onto the 11 Heaven Saint Masters of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, stopping them from moving forward to deal with the small group of elites that had already climbed up the walls. The experts of both sides did not move. Everyone knew that a battle between 20 Heaven Saint Masters would be an earth-shaking scene. Once the battle began, the mountains would collapse. Although the sturdy fortress of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom would be destroyed, the armies of both sides would also suffer extremely heavy losses. An entire 5 million soldiers of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom were gathered behind the fortress. The army was extremely dense. Once a battle between Heaven Saint Masters broke out, the shockwaves of energy would cause incalculable losses to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. On the other hand, the Qin Empire only had an army of 500,000. It could be said that the lives of every single soldier were much more precious and important than those of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. The 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire were even more unwilling to see the soldiers of the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion, die in such a scene. This caused the experts of both sides to become fearful. No one wanted to make a move so easily. The 500 small groups of elites slaughtered in all directions on the walls. No one could stop them, even if they were occasionally obstructed by the Earth Saint Masters of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. They would very quickly be killed by the combined forces of several small groups of elites. At this moment, quite a few of the 500,000 soldiers of the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion, had charged to the bottom of the walls. They all used the same method to scale the walls before engaging in an intense battle with the soldiers on the walls. Not long after, the tightly shut gates of the fortress were opened by a few soldiers in silver-white armor. The soldiers of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion that had been waiting outside immediately let out earth-shaking battle cries as they charged in. Chapter 492. An intense battle took place in the fortress of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Rivers of blood had already formed on the walls as corpses littered the ground. The silver-white armor of quite a few soldiers of the Eastern Swordsman Legion had already been dyed red with blood. Their armor was riddled with holes. If it were not for their powerful armor, some of them definitely would not have survived until now. After all, not everyone in the camp of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was weak. They would come across a few experts from time to time, or a single person would be attacked from all directions by over a dozen soldiers at the same time. All of these could injure them. Jianqin did not participate. He slowly retreated to the back on his magical beast and arrived beside Princess Yu. Noticing Princess Yu's slightly pale face, Jianqin knew that this was the first time she had seen such a bloody scene. She was not used to it, so he could not help but ask in concern, "Princess Yu, are you all right? If you really can't bear to watch any longer, just close your eyes." Princess Yu could not bear to watch the scene in front of her. She gently shook her head and muttered in a low voice, "Just how many people are going to die? War is just too cruel." Jianqin gently sighed. "There's nothing I can do about it. That's how war is." This scene basically plays out every day on the Tianyuan continent. The strong prey on the weak. This is the law of survival in the world. It's impossible to avoid war unless you can reach the level of the three great empires. Only with enough strength will no one provoke you. Changyang Shoten, persuade them to surrender. Don't kill them anymore. These soldiers have wives and children. Princess Yu could not bear to watch any longer as she pleaded. Although she knew that war was cruel and unavoidable, she still found it difficult to bear when she truly saw such a bloody scene. Jianqin stared at the beautiful princess with shining eyes and said, "Princess Yu, before you say that, I hope you can remember how the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom treated your father. Not only did they destroy a large portion of the kingdom of Jessen's imperial palace, they even captured your father. In the end, if it weren't for the 5 imperial advisors of my Changyang prefecture stopping the experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, it probably wouldn't just be your father. Even you would have been captured by the experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and become their prisoner." Princess Yu remained silent. She couldn't find any excuse to make a mistake. Jianqin continued, "Princess Yu, since you were born into this world, you don't need to feel pity. The path is under your own feet. It just depends on how you walk it. I already gave them a chance just now, but they didn't cherish it. In this world, there is no such thing as cruelty. Everything is based on strength. Only with enough strength can you survive. Do you know how many people's blood I've stained my hands in order to survive these past few years? Let me tell you, at most tens of thousands, at least a few thousand." Changyang Shoten's words are very reasonable. If it weren't for the Qin Empire's assistance, we definitely wouldn't have been able to resist the allied forces of the 4 empires. And this scene in front of us didn't happen in the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, but directly in the imperial palace of our kingdom of Jessen. The attackers were the allied forces of the 4 empires. Kargith Institute's principal, Kafir, also interjected. Princess Yu didn't say anything. She understood the logic of the 2 people's words very well. She rarely saw a scene of slaughter, but it was the first time she saw a life fall so easily. It was a very strong impact on her heart. After all, this wasn't as simple as a few dozen lives, but more than 1,000,000 lives. The scene of blood flowing like a river and death everywhere was so shocking that any girl who saw it for the first time wouldn't be able to bear it. Not to mention girls. Even some men who hadn't experienced such a scene would find it hard to bear. The death toll of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's soldiers rose rapidly. The battle had lasted for half a day and more than one. 5 million soldiers from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had lost their lives. The Qin Empire's Eastern Deity Sword Legion had also paid a price. But compared to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's casualties, it was negligible. Only a few dozen people had died in battle, and more than 10,000 people had suffered injuries of varying degrees. Looking at the battle situation around him, the old general in charge of commanding the troops had an unprecedentedly serious expression. The strength of the Qin Empire's elite troops was much more powerful than he had imagined. A 5 million strong army couldn't even stop a mere 500,000 people. Retreat. As expected, the old general gave the order to retreat. If this continued, even if the entire army was annihilated, it would absolutely not be able to cause too much damage to the elite troops of the Qin Empire. Following the sound of retreat, the great army of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom below immediately retreated like a tide. Many people even began to throw away their helmets and armor as they fled in a sorry state. Facing the Eastern Deity Sword Legion that was like a ferocious beast, these ordinary soldiers had long been scared out of their wits, because in their eyes, this group of silver-white armored soldiers was like a cockroach that couldn't be killed. Their saint weapons were very difficult to pierce through that layer of silver-white armor and injure them. More than a dozen people surrounded one person, and more than once the encirclement was broken by the opponent's intrepid aura and powerful battle strength. The soldiers of the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion, immediately chased after them on their magical beast mounts. With the speed of the magical beast mounts, they quickly blocked the front of the army, blocking the path of the army, leaving the millions of soldiers with no way to escape. Those who surrender will not be killed. A loud shout came from the sky. The Eastern Deity Sword Legion's deputy commander, Qin Wuming, loudly said. His loud and long voice continuously reverberated in the horizon. I surrender! I surrender! Don't kill me! Finally, a few people with weak minds declared their surrender. With someone taking the lead, the other people's final line of defense collapsed, causing more and more people to join the camp of surrendering. For a moment, sounds of surrender rang out everywhere. The moment the army surrendered, the 11 Heaven Saint Masters of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom looked at each other, then silently turned around and flew away. They had not come here to fight the experts of the Qin Empire, but to become the spiritual pillar of the 5 million-strong army. Now that the army's morale had completely fallen, there was no need for them to continue staying here. The 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire did not wait for Genshin's orders and took the initiative to chase after them. Both parties quickly disappeared into the horizon. Chapter 493. The Qin Huang Kingdom's 10 imperial teachers were fighting in the distance. They were very far away from the stronghold, so they couldn't see anyone. They could only hear the loud noises coming from the distant sky. All kinds of elemental powers were exploding in the sky, flashing with colorful lights. Genshin and the others didn't seem to care about the battle in the distance. They didn't even look at it because they were very confident in the strength of the Qin Empire's imperial advisors. The 11 experts from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom were no match for the 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire. General Qin Wuming, take over the fortress. Genshin said to Qin Wuming. Yes. Qin Wuming replied and immediately rode his magical beast into the fortress to make arrangements. Now that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's army had surrendered, the fortress had been completely taken over by the Eastern Deity Sword Legion. The battle stopped, and the 500,000 soldiers of the Kingdom of Jesson slowly moved into the fortress to rest and reorganize. In this battle, the Eastern Deity Sword Legion had lost 96 people. Over 20,000 people were lightly injured, and over 3,000 were heavily injured. They had killed over 1 million enemies and captured over 3 million. The result of this battle was very glorious. Only the elite armies of the 8 great kingdoms and the 3 great empires could achieve such a glorious battle result. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire all returned. Xiao Tian said to Genshin, "We killed 3 of them. The other 8 escaped with heavy injuries." Yes. Genshin nodded and said, "The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom has a total of 15 experts. Back then, 4 of them died in the Kingdom of Jesson. Now, 2 of them have been killed by you. In other words, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom only has 9 Heaven Saint Masters left. Right now, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom is of no threat to us at all. Although they have many ordinary soldiers, as long as we interfere, no matter how many soldiers they have, they will not be able to avoid defeat." Xiao Tian said. Genshin nodded in agreement and said, "That's right, the disparity between our military strength and theirs is too great. If necessary, we should also take action and try to reduce the losses of the Eastern Divine Sword Legion. All right, you guys can go and rest and continue tomorrow." After the army rested for a day, they continued their journey the next day. Their target was the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's imperial city. At the same time, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom also began to deploy troops on a large scale. The fortresses in the other three directions also sent out large amounts of troops and war resources to the imperial city. All the experts in the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's army had already gathered in the imperial city, preparing for the final resistance. At the same time, this was also the final battle that would determine the survival of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. The war between the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and the Qin Empire, one of the 8 great nations of the continent, had spread like wildfire in this region. It was extremely shocking, and the surrounding kingdoms were all paying close attention to this matter. A large number of spies had gathered in the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, closely watching this battle. As the news of the Qin Huang Kingdom spread, the Jesson Kingdom's reputation soared as well. Its status rose at an unimaginable speed. It went from being a small, unknown kingdom to a powerful existence that could not be provoked. The Qin Empire's attack on the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom made many kingdoms know of the close relationship between the Kingdom of Jesson and the Qin Empire. After 3 days of trekking, the million-strong army of the Qin Empire and the Kingdom of Jesson finally arrived at their final destination, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's imperial city. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's imperial city was extremely large. It was a king-level city, and its defensive capabilities were even stronger than that of a fortress. The 100-meter-high city walls were covered with a layer of reinforced steel plates that were a foot thick. It was as if the city walls were covered with a set of heavy armor. This layer of reinforced steel plates was not only heavy, but also many times harder than ordinary steel plates. Right now, almost all of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's military strength was gathered here, preparing for a life-and-death battle with the Qin Empire. As the space within the city was not as spacious as a fortress, it could not accommodate too many soldiers. Therefore, there were already over 2 million soldiers gathered outside the imperial city. The crowd was as dense as ants, and as far as the eye could see, one could only see swathes of heads. Rows of magic crystal cannons and crossbow carriages were set up on the ground, aiming ahead. Behind the army, hundreds of magic crystal cannons and even more crossbow carriages were set up on the city walls. Although there were millions of people gathered here, there was not the slightest bit of noise. The entire place was deathly silent, and this scene was incomparably strange and oppressive. Opposite the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, rows of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion, clad in silver-white armor, were all mounted on magical beast mounts. The entire army was filled with a ferocious aura that was similar to that of magical beasts. At the very front of the army, only Jianqin and the 13 experts of the Qin Empire were there. The king of the Kingdom of Jesson, Princess Yu, Changyangba, Mingdong, Dugafeng, Kafir, Yiming, Seniorin, and Yunzhang were all at the back to avoid any accidents. This was because this battle was destined to be much more tragic than the one at the northern fortress. This was the last battle that would determine the survival of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom would definitely fight to the death. For the sake of everyone's safety, Jianqin had them all retreat to the back. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and the Qin Empire's armies were locked in a stalemate, waiting for either side's commander to give the order for the battle to erupt. After 2 hours of stalemate, Jianqin turned to Qin Wuming and said, "Give the order to attack!" The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom looked like they were going to fight to the death, so Jianqin could not be bothered to waste time persuading them to surrender. Qin Wuming nodded slightly, then waved his hand and shouted, "Attack!" Just as Qin Wuming's voice fell, a series of cannon shots suddenly rang out from the rear of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion. Countless fireballs with extremely unstable energy fluctuations flew over the heads of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion soldiers, then fell into the dense crowd of Heavenly Eagle Kingdom soldiers. Half of these magic crystal cannons were taken from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's fortress, while the other half were carried by the Eastern Deity Sword Legion. They had always been separated and placed in their spatial rings, only taking them out when necessary. As the most elite legion of the Qin Empire, not only were they all powerful, they even had all kinds of war tools. Previously, when they attacked the northern fortress of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, they did not need to use the magic crystal cannons at all, so they did not use them. However, the defensive power of the Imperial City was much stronger than that of the fortress, and the defensive power of the city walls was also much stronger than that of the fortress. The surface of the city walls was covered with a layer of reinforced steel that was 1 foot thick, and even the magical beasts they were riding on would have a hard time breaking through it with their claws. It was simply impossible for them to climb up the city walls like they did against the fortress. Faced with such a situation, they had already reached the point where they had no choice but to use the magic crystal cannons. Boom, 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 boom. With a series of loud explosions, countless fireballs exploded where the soldiers were the most concentrated, creating deep craters in the ground. The surrounding soldiers were either directly killed or injured. Just a single wave of attack had caused the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's soldiers to suffer heavy casualties. At the same time, the commander of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom also gave the order to attack. The magic crystal cannons on the ground and on the city walls simultaneously fired in the direction of the Qin Empire. Several hundred energy cannons tore through the sky, falling like meteors towards the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion. Genshin and the 13 experts behind him all soared into the sky at the same time. The 14 Heaven Saint Masters scattered in the air and struck out with their palms. Surging energy of the world surged forward, stopping the energy cannons from advancing. In the end, the several hundred energy cannons flew less than 500 meters before they lost their momentum and fell to the ground. The ground below just happened to be the front line of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's ground troops. Not only did this wave of energy cannons fail to injure a single soldier of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion, it even killed quite a few of their own people. Bastards, you've gone too far. You've actually interfered in the battle between ordinary soldiers. An angry roar suddenly rang out from the city walls of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Shortly after, 19 Heaven Saint Masters flew up from the city walls and faced off against Genshin and the 14 experts in the air. Seeing 19 experts suddenly appear from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, a trace of surprise flashed through Genshin's eyes. This was because, according to his calculations, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom only had 9 experts left. Now that 10 more people had suddenly appeared, it really did surprise him. I never thought that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom would have outside help. I wonder who dares to become enemies with the Qin Empire. Genshin sneered as he looked at the dozen people in front of him. A cold light flickered in his eyes. A middle-aged man in tight robes clasped his hands and calmly said, "We are from the sect of Dragon and Tiger. Now that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom belongs to our sect, we hope that everyone from the Qin Empire can withdraw from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom." Chapter 494. A middle-aged man in tight attire cupped his hands and said with a calm expression, "We are from the Dragon and Tiger sect. Now that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom belongs to our Dragon and Tiger sect, we hope that everyone from the Qin Huang Kingdom can withdraw from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom." Genshin frowned slightly, and his expression turned gloomy. Although he didn't know where the Dragon and Tiger sect came from, he knew that the Dragon and Tiger sect's strength wasn't simple based on the fact that they weren't afraid of the Qin Empire. However, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was a country that Genshin had to destroy. The Dragon and Tiger sect's sudden intervention to protect the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom made Genshin very unhappy. The expressions of the 10 Qin Empire Imperial advisors and the 3 Qin Wuming sons turned ugly after hearing the middle-aged man's words. Their eyes flashed coldly. Your Dragon and Tiger sect actually interfered with the matters of the Qin Empire. Do you want to become enemies with the Qin Empire? One of the Qin Empire's Imperial advisors said in a deep voice. He was one of the 5 Imperial advisors who came with the army. The middle-aged man who spoke didn't seem to be afraid of the Qin Empire. He smiled and cupped his hands, saying calmly, "Your Excellency's words are too serious. Our Dragon and Tiger sect doesn't want to become enemies with the Qin Empire. It's just that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom has already become a power of our dragon and tiger sect. It's only natural that we interfere with the matters of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom." At this point, the middle-aged man paused for a moment, as if he felt that protecting the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was enough to show his unyielding attitude. He immediately softened his tone to save some face for the Qin Empire. He didn't want to offend the Qin Empire because of this matter. Our dragon and tiger sect is clear about the small misunderstanding between the kingdom of Jessen and the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. This matter is indeed the fault of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Here, we, the dragon and tiger sect, represent the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom to apologize to everyone. At the same time, we are willing to compensate the kingdom of Jessen with a large sum of money. We hope that we can turn hostility into friendship in the future. The middle-aged man clearly had a high position in the dragon and tiger sect. Not only could he represent the dragon and tiger sect, but he could also decide the fate of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom with a single sentence. A cold smile appeared on Jianshin's face. Although he knew that the dragon and tiger sect was not afraid of the Qin Empire, he was not afraid at all. He said in a deep voice, "I will definitely destroy the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. This is an unchangeable ending. If your dragon and tiger sect insists on getting involved, then don't blame us." Jianshin's attitude was very unyielding, letting everyone see his unshakable determination to destroy the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. The middle-aged man's complexion slightly changed. A trace of cold light flashed in his eyes. Jianshin's words had angered him. As for the other experts of the dragon and tiger sect, their complexions became very ugly. Jianshin's words were undoubtedly a threat in their ears. The great battle below did not stop. The energy waves from the magic crystal cannons constantly shot through the air and bombarded the enemy's camp, causing dust to fill the sky. The 500,000-strong army of the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion, was fiercely exchanging fire with the army of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, who outnumbered them by more than 10 times. The great battle below did not affect the experts in the sky. The middle-aged man in blue from the dragon and tiger sect coldly stared at Jianshin. He said in a deep voice, "You must be the 4th young master of the Chanyang Prefecture, Chanyang Shoten. To be able to reach the realm of Heaven Saint Master at such a young age, you are indeed the first person in the history of the Tian Yuan continent. However, young Master Chanyang Shoten, this is a negotiation between my dragon and tiger sect and the Qin Empire. What qualifications do you have to participate? Unless you can represent the Qin Empire?" The middle-aged man had already obtained enough information about Chanyang Shoten from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. However, he only knew what the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom possessed. "Chanyang Shoten is the imperial protector of my Qin Empire. Does my identity as the imperial protector of the Qin Empire not represent my Qin Empire?" Before Jianshin could reply, Xiao Tian furiously roared. His gaze toward the middle-aged man was extremely sharp. Xiao Tian's words caused the expressions of all the experts from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and the Dragon and Tiger sect to drastically change. They all stared at Jianshin in shock. Even Xiao En, who had interacted with Jianshin a few times before, could not help but cry out, "What? He's the imperial protector of the Qin Empire." Xiao En's face was filled with shock and disbelief. No one had thought that the 4th young master of the Chanyang Prefecture, Chanyang Shoten, would actually be the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. However, this also explained why the Qin Empire would spend so much effort to aid the kingdom of Jessen. Jianshin did not reveal the slightest bit of complacency after his identity was revealed. He still maintained the same expression as before. He looked at the group of people in front of him with an unsightly expression and said, "Now I have the qualifications to represent the Qinhuang Kingdom." The middle-aged man from the Dragon Tiger sect swallowed his saliva with some difficulty. In his heart, he felt some regret for the words he had just said. Who would have thought that the imperial protector of the Qinhuang Empire was this young man in front of him? Although the Dragon and Tiger sect was one of the top clans in the Tianyuan continent and did not fear the Qin Huang Empire, there was still a large gap between their strength and the Qin Huang Empire. The reason why they dared to obstruct the Qin Huang Empire was because there were many factors involved. Firstly, they were very far away from the Qin Empire. If the Qin Empire wanted to deal with the Dragon and Tiger sect, they would have to pay quite a price. With the Dragon and Tiger sect strength, they would be able to cause a certain amount of damage to the Qin Empire. Secondly, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had now become the territory of the Dragon and Tiger sect. It was completely under their control, so it was perfectly justifiable for them to interfere in this matter. They had always been on the side of reason. Thirdly, the cause of this matter was just too small. It was so small that the Dragon and Tiger sect believed that they would be able to resolve the matter with an apology and some compensation. This was because the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had not caused any substantial damage to the Kingdom of Jessin. The deaths of a few soldiers and the destruction of the palace were insignificant matters. At most, they would lose some face. Now that the Kingdom of Jessin had joined forces with the Qin Empire to attack the imperial capital of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, they had regained the face they had lost long ago, or even more. Moreover, the Dragon and Tiger sect was not a pushover. They were certain that the Qin Empire would not become enemies with them over such a small matter, which was why they dared to interfere so boldly. This was because the Dragon and Tiger sect also had saint ruler experts. It was just that they did not have as many as the Qin Empire. However, they had now offended the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. This matter was no small matter. The position of the imperial protector of the Qin Empire was not inferior to the king. If the opinions of several imperial protectors were united, they could even dismiss the current king. If this matter was not handled properly, this small matter in the Dragon and Tiger sect's eyes would immediately escalate. In the end, the two forces might really end up in a huge conflict. The middle-aged man immediately clasped his hands at Jianqin and apologized. "I am the vice sect leader of the Dragon and Tiger sect, Hu Ba. I have offended you first." Hu Ba sincerely apologizes to Lord Imperial Protector. "I hope that Lord Imperial Protector will not take this matter to heart." The middle-aged man's attitude towards Jianqin immediately changed. At the same time, he understood that Jianqin was the key to solving this problem. Whether the conflict between the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and the Kingdom of Jessin could be resolved peacefully would all depend on his opinion. Jianqin did not care about such a small matter. He said, "Vice sect leader Hu Ba, I will still say the same thing. I will destroy the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. It's not too late for your Dragon and Tiger sect to withdraw now." Jianqin had spent so much effort to get so many reinforcements from the Qin Empire. How could he withdraw so easily? It could be said that Jianqin would not give up until he achieved his goal. The vice sect leader of the Dragon and Tiger sect, Hu Ba's expression changed slightly. He said in a deep voice, "Imperial Protector, is it worth it to make an enemy out of my Dragon and Tiger sect over such a small matter? It's not that we have a grudge against your Dragon and Tiger sect. You are the one who insisted on interfering. I will say this one last time. It's not too late for you to withdraw from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom." Jianqin said, giving the Dragon and Tiger sect a final warning. "Since the Imperial Protector insists on doing this, then we have nothing to talk about," Hu Ba said in a deep voice. Although the Qin Empire was stronger than the Dragon and Tiger sect, the Dragon and Tiger sect did not fear the Qin Empire. Moreover, the difference between the Qin Empire and the Qin Empire was too great. If the Qin Empire wanted to deal with the Dragon and Tiger sect, not only would they have to expend a large amount of effort, they would also have to pay a certain price. Following Hu Ba's words, the experts from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and the Dragon and Tiger sect prepared for battle. Now that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had the support of the Dragon and Tiger sect, they had more than enough strength. Jianqin coldly snorted. He waved his hand and yelled, "Go!" The 10 imperial advisors of the Qin Huang Empire, Qin Wuming, and his two sons immediately charged forward, engaging in a great battle with the experts from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and the Dragon and Tiger sect. As the core members of the Qin Huang Empire, they were well aware of the strength of the Qin Huang Empire, so they did not place the Dragon and Tiger sect in their eyes. This was because the Qin Huang Empire had far more Heaven Saint Masters and Saint Rulers than the Dragon and Tiger sect. Furthermore, the Qin Huang Empire also had many vassal kingdoms, which was also a huge force. Imperial Protector, let Huba have a taste of your skills. The Vice Sect Master of the Dragon and Tiger sect threw caution to the wind. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was extremely important to them because it was the key for the Dragon and Tiger sect to advance once again. Therefore, they had to protect the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Moreover, the Dragon and Tiger sect had coveted the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom for a long time. They had tried to negotiate with the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom more than once, but they had all failed. Now that the king was finally willing to hand over the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom to them, they obviously would not give up so easily. Even if they had to offend the Qin Empire, they would not give up so easily. Chapter 495. Although Huba only looked like a middle-aged man in his 40s, his true age was over 200 years old. His talent for cultivation was not bad either, having already reached the 5th cycle of Heaven Saint Master. Coupled with his status as the Vice Sect Master of the sect of Dragon and Tiger, he had also grasped an extremely powerful Heaven Tier battle skill. His overall battle prowess was no weaker than Shao Tian's. Although Jianqin's age was not enough to enter Huba's eyes, Huba already had a rough understanding of Jianqin's strength from Zhuozhen. He did not dare to underestimate Jianqin at all, so he used his full strength right from the start. His mountain splitter blade was powerful and heavy as it slashed towards Jianqin with dense earth attributed Saint force. The blade tore through the air with an ear-piercing sound. With a thought from Jianqin, countless arm-thick steel crossbow bolts floated into the air and shot towards Huba with a lightning-like speed covered in a layer of azure and violet sword chi. The scene was shocking and magnificent. Over 10,000 crossbow bolts shot through the air, and the sound of them tearing through the air overlapped with each other, forming an ear-piercing sound. Seeing over 10,000 crossbow bolts shooting up from below and noticing the faint layer of azure and violet light on the bolts, Huba immediately thought of Zhuozhen's words. His expression immediately changed. The blade that was originally aimed at Jianqin was forcefully changed and slashed downwards. With a wave of the mountain splitter blade, a 5 to 6 meter long blade of yellow light suddenly flashed and shot towards the incoming bolts with a thunderous speed. In the blink of an eye, over 10,000 bolts collided with the blade of light. Huba's blade of light was much more powerful than he had imagined. With a series of crisp sounds, a large number of bolts were either blown away or cut into two by the blade of light. After all, this was the full strength attack of a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master. Its power could not be underestimated. Even though Huba's blade of light was extremely powerful, there was still a moment when its energy was used up. It only managed to cut through a few hundred bolts before the blade of light dissipated due to the lack of energy. The remaining bolts did not slow down at all and continued to shoot towards Huba. Huba's expression was rather serious as he said, "Normal steel bolts actually have such power under your control. Even a Heaven Saint Master's protective aura would not be able to block such an attack. However, it can't threaten me. Earth God's armor." A rich yellow light burst out from Tyrant Tiger's body. In an instant, it condensed into a set of golden armor on the surface of his body, exuding a layer of faint golden light. Earth Saint Force had the strongest defense out of the 6 elements. It was known as the Supreme Defense. As a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master, if Huba used his full strength to condense an armor around his body, its defense would definitely be extremely strong. It would be able to block a few attacks from a Heaven Saint Master without shattering. Not to mention, he was currently using a high-level Earth Tier support skill, the Earth God's Armor. The Earth God's Armor was a defensive skill that was completely tailored for Earth Saint Force experts. Its defense was extremely strong. If he wore this armor, even a Heaven Saint Master would have a hard time injuring him. This was because the Earth Tier battle skill used by a Heaven Saint Master could only barely scratch the surface of the Earth God's armor. In order to injure Hubal who wore the armor, only a Heaven Tier battle skill would be able to do so. With the protection of the Earth God's armor, Hubal ignored the crossbow bolts below him. When the crossbow bolts landed on his body, only a series of collisions could be heard. These crossbow bolts, with violet and green sword chi, were unable to harm Hubal at all. Even so, the powerful impact of the crossbow bolts still caused Hubal's body to sway. Hubal angrily roared. The mountain breaker blade in his hand shot out a 3-meter long blade light. He slashed out a few times like lightning, leaving behind layers of blade shadows in the air. He knocked away all the bolts in the surroundings and then immediately charged towards Jianchen. Go! At this moment, 3 swords formed from countless bolts floated in front of Jianchen. With a soft roar, the 3 swords formed from bolts shot towards Hubal who was charging towards him. Insignificant skill, break for me! Hubal growled. The mountain breaker blade carried a surge of Saint force as it collided with the 3 swords. The 3 swords were shattered and countless bolts as thick as an arm shot out in all directions. However, just as the 3 swords were shattered, Hubal's face suddenly became serious. He saw that Jianchen had already arrived in front of him. His originally empty right hand suddenly had 2 beams of light, one purple and one green. Could this be the mysterious power that George N. said could destroy his saint weapon? Hubal's face became incomparably serious. Facing a power that could easily destroy a saint weapon, even he couldn't help but be cautious. Jianchen used the Azure Sword Spirit's origin energy as the light wind sword and used it to attack Hubal's chest. However, Hubal already knew the power of the origin energy of the Azure and Violet Sword Spirits, so he didn't dare to take it head-on. He hastily retreated while shouting. A huge blade of light that was over 10 meters long shot out from the saint weapon. It chopped towards Jianchen with a force that could split a mountain. The faint image of a mountain flashed, giving people a feeling that it was extremely powerful. Earth Tier battle skill. Feeling the faint pressure on his body, Jianchen revealed a disdainful sneer. Unless he encountered a Heaven Tier battle skill, these Earth Tier battle skills were no threat to him. Jianchen controlled the Azure Sword Spirit's origin energy to block Hubal's Earth Tier battle skill. Without any hesitation, he immediately chased after Hubal. The Azure Sword Spirit's origin energy transformed into the light wind sword and was continuously stabbed by Jianchen. Chapter 496. Although Hubal had heard from Qiao En that the purplish-green light could not be touched, he still wanted to try and see if the strange purplish and green light was as powerful as Qiao En had said. Hubal roared as he changed from holding the blade with one hand to holding it with both hands. The veins on his arms bulged as a surge of saint force flowed through his arms and into the mountain-splitting blade in his hands. With the infusion of saint force, the mountain-splitting blade began to shine brightly, gradually turning from an earthy yellow light to a golden light. The dazzling golden light was like a dazzling sun in the sky, making it difficult for people to open their eyes. Hubal's eyes suddenly became extremely sharp as he locked onto Jianchen. With a low voice, he said word by word, "Heaven Tier battle skill, sun swallowing gold." As soon as he finished speaking, a pressure suddenly came from the heavens and earth. It was as if a huge mountain was pressing down on Jianchen's body, causing Jianchen's floating body to sink slightly. The huge pressure caused Jianchen's clothes to stick tightly to his body. Jianchen's expression finally became serious at this moment. He didn't care about Earth Tier battle skills, but facing Heaven Tier battle skills, he had to be careful and cautious. Back then, old sect master Yang Jizong's Heaven Tier battle skill had already posed a slight threat to him, let alone Hubal, who was even stronger than old sect master Yang Jizong. He couldn't afford to be careless. Although Earth-tier battle skills and Heaven-tier battle skills were only one level apart, the difference in power was like the difference between Heaven and Earth. They couldn't be compared at all. Otherwise, they wouldn't have used the words Earth and Heaven to differentiate battle skills. Genshin's eyes suddenly exploded with two bright lights. In the next moment, one purple and one green light flashed in Genshin's eyes, causing Genshin's eyes to completely turn purple and green, as if they didn't belong to a human. Not only did they look strange, but they also looked extremely demonic with a dense evil charm. Suddenly, the countless steel ballista bolts scattered all over the battlefield floated into the air. Even the steel ballista bolts prepared on the walls seemed to be bound by an invisible force as they all flew into the air at an extremely fast speed. In the end, they all hovered around Genshin. Every single one of the steel ballista bolts gave off an azure violet sword chi that was even stronger than the previous bolts. In an instant, Genshin's body was surrounded by countless steel arrows. As he stood in the center of the countless steel arrows, Genshin seemed like a god that controlled everything in the world, mighty and inviolable. Several tens of thousands of steel arrows floated in the air, motionless. This scene looked very strange, startling the soldiers fighting below. They couldn't help but raise their heads to look at the sky, their faces full of shock. It was a long story, but everything happened in a single thought. And at this time, Huba's Heaven-tier battle skill had also finished charging. He tightly gripped his mountain breaker blade with both hands as it streaked across the sky with a glaring golden light. It looked very ordinary and ordinary as it slashed towards Genshin. This slash looked very ordinary, like a farmer chopping firewood. But this simple slash seemed to contain some kind of profound mystery of the world. It actually made Genshin feel like he couldn't dodge, as if he was surrounded by the slash's aura. There was no space for him to escape, and the only way out was to brace himself and block it. Genshin's hand slowly moved in front of him as the several tens of thousands of steel arrows floating around him rapidly condensed in front of him. Under the control of Genshin's powerful will, they instantly condensed into a 30-meter-long steel sword. It then shot forward with a dense layer of purplish-green sword chi. Genshin didn't stop after the steel sword shot out. He grabbed at the air with both hands, and two fire elemental swords condensed. They emitted heaven-burning flames as they followed behind the steel sword. A terrifying heat spread out, causing the temperature of the surroundings to rapidly rise. Although these methods couldn't block a Heaven-tier battle skill, they could at least weaken its power and lessen some of the pressure on Genshin. When Genshin's attack collided with Huba's mountain breaker blade, there wasn't the expected explosion. The several dozen meter long steel sword couldn't resist at all as it was split in half. The fire elemental swords behind it were also scattered by the mountain breaker blade, turning into waves of fire that filled the sky and dissipated into the surroundings. Although Huba had easily broken through Genshin's attack, Huba's Heaven-tier battle skill had been weakened by Genshin. It was no longer as powerful as it was at its peak, but it was still very terrifying. The origin energy in Genshin's right hand burst out to 3 meters long as he directly flew up to meet the Heaven-tier battle skill head-on. Boom! The collision this time caused a violent explosion that caused the sky to tremble and space to shake. Genshin and Huba's figures had long since been swallowed by the violent storm of energy and disappeared without a trace. Genshin and Huba's battle didn't affect the other experts. At this moment, a few more violent explosions came from nearby. The violent energy formed a terrifying shockwave that scattered the clouds in the sky. Several state preceptors from the Qinhuang Kingdom executed their Heaven-tier combat skills at the same time, severely injuring their opponents. They fell from the sky while coughing up blood. 2 experts from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom were killed in one hit by the Heaven-tier combat skills. More than 20 Heaven Saint Masters were fighting in the sky. However, they were in a relatively high position, at least a few thousand meters in the air. So although the shock waves from the battle were fierce, they didn't cause much damage to the soldiers fighting on the ground. As the shock waves slowly dissipated, Jianqin and Huba's figures slowly appeared in everyone's line of sight. The two of them were 50 meters apart, floating in the air and looking at each other. Their faces were slightly pale and their figures were in a sorry state. They could no longer maintain their previous elegance. There were a few pieces of torn cloth hanging on their clothes. On Jianqin's chest, there was even a bloody wound that stretched from his chest to his abdomen, dyeing his clothes red. He was clearly injured. However, the origin energy of the azure sword spirits in his hand still gave off a pure and solid color. Huba was a 5th cycle Heaven Saint Master after all. The Heaven tier battle skill he used was so powerful that even Jianqin couldn't avoid being injured. However, it was only a light injury and not a fatal one. As for Huba, who was facing Jianqin, the mountain breaker blade in his right hand had already become dim and had lost its previous color. On the edge of the blade, there was a conspicuous gap that was about the size of 2 fingers. Suddenly, Huba spat out a mouthful of blood. After spitting out this mouthful of blood, Huba's face became even paler. When he fought with Jianqin before, he wasn't injured at all. However, the moment his saint weapon and the origin energy of the sword spirits clashed, his saint weapon was as weak as a piece of tofu. It was easily destroyed by the origin energy of the sword spirits, and because of the saint weapon, he also suffered an extremely serious internal injury. Huba's expression was extremely serious as he looked at the gap on the mountain breaker blade. A look of shock flashed through his eyes before his gaze landed on the origin energy of the sword spirits in Jianqin's hand. He said in a deep voice, "Can you tell me just what kind of energy is this? It's actually so powerful." After truly experiencing the strength of the origin energy of the sword spirits, Huba's heart was filled with dread towards this energy. This energy was simply the nemesis of all experts. "No comment," Jianqin said. Huba snorted lightly and said, "If you abandon this energy, you are simply not my opponent." Jianqin mockingly looked at Huba and sneered, "If I were the same age as you, even if I didn't use this energy, you still wouldn't be my opponent." Hearing Jianqin's words, Huba was slightly stunned. He couldn't help but secretly curse himself for being foolish. He actually made such a low-level mistake and started arguing with a junior. "Vice sect leader Huba, although your strength is stronger than mine, you are definitely not my opponent. You cannot stop me from destroying the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom," Jianqin said expressionlessly. Huba's face turned cold and said, "Changyang Shoden, we indeed cannot stop you from destroying the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. However, my dragon and tiger sect will remember today's matter. Although my dragon and tiger sect strength is not comparable to the Qin Empire's, it is not so easy to provoke. The future is long, let's wait and see." After throwing down these words, Huba called out to everyone and turned around to fly away. When the other powerful fighters from Dragon Tiger Sect saw that their Vice Sect Master had retreated, they also abandoned their opponents and turned around to fly away. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind the few powerful fighters from Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Regarding their departure, the 13 experts of the Qin Empire did not stop them. The Dragon and Tiger Sect was also a peak clan with great strength. They did not want to have a bad relationship with the Dragon and Tiger Sect and create an enemy for the Qin Empire. When the Dragon and Tiger Sect retreated, the remaining experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom were like deflated balloons. They immediately deflated and no longer had the courage to fight. The strength of the Imperial Advisor of the Qin Empire was originally stronger than them. He could almost fight 1 against 2. Even though he was at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, he was still able to fight evenly with them. Not to mention, now that the Imperial Advisor had doubled their strength, if they continued to fight, not only would they have no chance of winning, they would not even have the ability to escape. Chapter 497. The Dragon and Tiger Sect was the final pillar of support for the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's experts. With the retreat of the dragon and tiger sect, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom also lost the ability to contend against the Qin Empire. The other Heaven Saint Masters of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom also did not want to lose their lives for no reason. This was because they were all involved in the affairs of their kingdom and did not have much enmity with the kingdom of Jessin. There was no need for this, so they all gave up resisting and surrendered. The Dragon and Tiger sect was the pillar of support for the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's Heaven Saint Masters. But these Heaven Saint Masters were also the pillars of support for the ordinary soldiers below. With the capture of the remaining Heaven Saint Masters of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, the soldiers below all lost the courage to fight and surrendered one after another. Jianqin ordered people to find a few thick chains and had Xiaotian and the others tie up the Heaven Saint Masters of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Although these chains could not bind Heaven Saint Masters, this scene in the eyes of the ordinary soldiers had a completely different meaning. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's experts did not dare to speak out against the Qin Empire's treatment of them, but they could only silently endure the humiliation. Although this made them lose face in front of an army of millions, as long as they could preserve their lives, this bit of face was nothing. Moreover, it was not unjust that they had fallen into the hands of the Qin Empire's imperial preceptor. Xiaotian, the 10 of you stay here and watch over them. If they dare to resist or have any ill intentions, kill them on the spot. Jianqin said to Xiaotian and the other imperial preceptors, "Yes, Sir Imperial Protector." Xiaotian replied. Afterward, the 10 imperial preceptors suppressed the experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and landed on the city walls. Jianqin looked at Qin Wuming and his sons and said, "Qin Wuming, Qin Wutian, Qin Wujian, the 3 of you lead 100,000 soldiers of the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion, and follow me to surround the imperial palace." Unknowingly, Jianqin's tone of voice carried a sense of dignity. Perhaps it was because he had been in a high position for a long time, but Jianqin had actually developed such an aura. Yes. Qin Wuming and his 2 sons immediately went to gather the manpower. Jianqin slowly descended from the sky and went to the back of the army to meet the king of the kingdom of Jessin and his men. "Xiang'er, what's the situation up ahead? How did so many experts suddenly appear within the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom?" Changyangba couldn't help but ask. He was also very concerned about the battle ahead, but because there was still some distance between here and the front line, he wasn't very clear about the situation ahead. "Father, it's fine now. Those Heaven Saint Masters were the helpers that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom found, but they all retreated. Right now, all the experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom have surrendered and been captured by us. The Imperial City is also under our control. All we have to do is wait for the Imperial Palace to capture the king." Jianqin's tone was very calm. To him, this was a very ordinary thing. It did not cause his emotions to fluctuate at all. "Hee, nephew, why don't we all surround the Imperial Palace together? This king must personally see the miserable state of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's king." The king of the kingdom of Jessin chuckled. His voice was filled with desire. Right now, he no longer had the bearing of a king at all. "I want to go too." Princess Yuyu's face was also filled with eagerness. Perhaps it was because she was too excited, but her pretty face had turned pink. However, this made her look even more enchanting. Jianqin smiled and said, "Right now, all the experts of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom have been captured. At most, there's an Earth Saint Master left in the Imperial Palace. There's no longer any threat. Let's all go together." The 500,000 soldiers of the Kingdom of Jessin did not enter the Imperial City. Instead, they set up camp outside the city. Jianqin led the king, Changyangba, and the others toward the tall gates of the Imperial City on their magical beast mounts. The 4 hooves of the magical beast mounts stepped on the blood-red ground, causing blood to spurt out from time to time. The entire area was filled with the thick smell of blood. It was extremely pungent, causing Princess Yuyu to cover her nose tightly with her hands. She closed her eyes tightly, not daring to look at the ground. Compared to the outside of the imperial city, the inside of the imperial city was like a pure land on earth. Although there were still remnants of the smoke of war, at least it was not as bloody as the outside of the city. It looked relatively cleaner. Gentian's group waited for a while in the city. Soon, they saw Qin Wuming and his sons leading a group of blood-covered soldiers on magical beast mounts. "Let's go to the imperial palace," Jianqin shouted softly. He rode at the front of the group and headed straight for the imperial palace. On both sides of the street, many commoners and mercenaries who lived in the imperial city stood and watched. They pointed their fingers at the Qin Empire's army as they ran in the middle of the street. Many of them had expressions of worry and panic on their faces, afraid that they would be implicated in the war. The army advanced quickly. In less than half an hour, they arrived at the gates of the imperial palace of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. However, compared to the past, the imperial palace of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had lost its former majesty. Although it was still intact, it seemed to be filled with a sense of desolation. It was as if the dusk of the apocalypse had come to an end. It no longer had the dazzling grandeur of the past. When the group of soldiers standing guard on the palace walls saw the arrival of Gentian's group, they were immediately frightened. Then they ran down the walls and disappeared in a panic. "Surround the imperial palace. Forbid anyone from entering or leaving. If anyone disobeys, kill without mercy," Jianqin ordered loudly. His voice rang out in the ears of every soldier of the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion. "Yes, sir." The 100,000 soldiers roared and immediately began to move. Very soon, they surrounded the entire imperial palace. Jianqin's group rode their magical beast mounts into the imperial palace at a steady pace. Behind them, there was a small group of around 100 elites. Every single one of them was an Earth Saint Master. At this moment, the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom sat alone on the dragon throne in a dispirited manner. He stared blankly at the empty hall, completely devoid of life. He had already received news from the front lines. Originally, he thought that he could rely on the power of the sect of Dragon and Tiger to get through this crisis safely. This was because the sect of Dragon and Tiger was a peak sect on the Tianyuan continent. They were extremely powerful. Even if they were not as powerful as the Qin Empire, they were enough to make the Qin Empire fear them. However, he never thought that the kingdom of Jessin and the Qin Empire would be so determined to destroy his Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. They would not retreat even if they became enemies with the sect of Dragon and Tiger, swearing to flatten his kingdom. Looking at the empty hall, the king felt sorrowful. He knew that after this incident, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom would forever become history on the Tianyuan continent. It would no longer exist. I really never thought that a single wrong decision back then would destroy the empire that my ancestors had spent countless efforts to build. The king sighed inside. He felt extremely helpless. At this moment, an old eunuch ran over in a panic. He hurriedly asked, "Your Majesty, the first prince, second prince, and third princess have all escaped into the secret tunnel. There's not much time left. Your Majesty should leave quickly. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late." The king gently shook his head. He did not say anything. For a moment, the old eunuch did not understand what he meant. "Your Majesty, there really isn't enough time. The army of the Qin Empire has already entered the imperial palace. They'll find us soon. Your Majesty, if you don't leave now, it'll be too late. You should leave quickly. With Aoyama here, there's no need to worry about running out of firewood. As long as you keep your life, you'll have a chance to rise again in the future." The old eunuch anxiously tried to dissuade the king. "No, I'm not leaving." The king finally spoke. He gently pushed the old eunuch away and stood up from his throne. He glanced around the empty hall and muttered with a depressed expression, "If you want to leave, then leave. I'm not leaving. 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 I'm staying." Your Majesty, don't say such foolish things. There's no time. Leave quickly. If you don't leave now, it'll be too late. The old eunuch anxiously pulled the king's arm and tried to pull him away. Chapter 498. Your Majesty, as long as Aoyama is around, there's no need to worry about running out of firewood. The most important thing right now is to stay alive. If we're captured by the people of the kingdom of Jessen, they definitely won't let us live. The old eunuch crawled up from the ground and said in a sorrowful voice. His expression was filled with anxiety because he could already hear the sound of galloping hooves rushing over. If you want to leave, you can leave. This king will not leave. This king will live and die with the heavenly eagle kingdom. The king of the heavenly eagle kingdom's attitude was firm, as if he had no regard for life or death. Even if he died, he would not be the ruler of a fallen kingdom. Ha 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 ha! Your Majesty the King, it's really hard to imagine that you're such an unyielding man. Your spirit is worthy of respect. A burst of laughter suddenly came from the outside. As soon as the voice fell, a large group of people came in from the outside in an aggressive manner. The person in the lead was a young man who looked to be in his 20s. Seeing that this group of people had already entered the main hall, the old eunuch, who had advised His Majesty to escape, instantly paled. He muttered absent-mindedly, "It's over, it's over. Even if we want to leave now, we won't be able to." The old eunuch's face was filled with despair. Although he was loyal to the king, he was also very afraid of death. The king of the heavenly eagle kingdom slowly sat on his dragon steed. His hands were casually placed on the armrests that were completely made of gold. His expression was solemn and his gaze was sharp. He fully displayed the demeanor of an emperor. Although he was about to become the ruler of a fallen kingdom, at this moment he had regained his usual unmoving demeanor and was fearless of death. The king of the heavenly eagle kingdom's sharp gaze slowly swept across Genshin's group. He said in a deep voice, "I didn't expect that the trip to the kingdom of Jessenbach then would lead my heavenly eagle kingdom to eternal damnation. If it weren't for that incident back then, perhaps my heavenly eagle kingdom wouldn't have ended up like this." Jianshan laughed coldly and said, "That's right. If it weren't for that incident back then, your heavenly eagle kingdom wouldn't have ended up like this. However, there's no medicine for regret in this world. It's too late for you to regret it now. Everything is already set in stone. Even if you regret it, you can't change anything. That's right. There's no medicine for regret. It's useless for me to regret now." The king of the heavenly eagle kingdom sighed. He slowly leaned his back against the dragon throne and said, "There is a question that this king has always been unable to understand. I wonder if everyone can answer it for this king." "Go ahead. Seeing that you're in such dire straits, there are some questions that I can tell you." "I can answer them," said Genshin. "Back when this king sent experts to the kingdom of Jessen, although there was some trouble, it didn't cause much damage to the kingdom of Jessen. Instead, we lost a few experts. Speaking of which, the one who suffered in the end was our heavenly eagle kingdom. Could it be that your kingdom of Jessen spent so much effort to ally with the Qin Empire to destroy my heavenly eagle kingdom over such a small matter?" The king of the heavenly eagle kingdom had been doubtful about this for a long time. "A small matter? Humph! 10 experts from your heavenly eagle kingdom fought in my Changyang prefecture and caused great damage to my Changyang prefecture. The entire residence was destroyed by your experts, causing everyone in Changyang prefecture to suffer injuries of varying severity. If it weren't for the fact that the 5 imperial advisors of the Qin Empire just happened to be in my Changyang prefecture probably wouldn't have been able to survive that disaster. Even the king of our kingdom of Jessen might have been captured by you long ago. Is this a small matter?" Jianshin said sternly. The king of the heavenly eagle kingdom stared at Jianshin and said, "If I'm not wrong, you should be the 4th young master of Changyang prefecture, Changyang Shoten." "That's right. That's me," Jianshin said proudly. The king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom swept his gaze over the group of people behind Genshin and said, "The kingdom of Jessin and the Qin Empire suddenly have a close relationship. All of this must be because of you. This king really wants to know what's the relationship between you and the Qin Empire. You actually made the Qin Empire expend so much effort to aid the kingdom of Jessin. There are quite a lot of things you want to know," Genshin said with a smile. "Since you want to know so much, I'll satisfy your curiosity." Genshin paused for a moment and then asked, "I'm sure you know that the reason the Qin Empire sent experts to aid the kingdom of Jessin in repelling the 4 allied armies was because of an imperial protector of the Qin Empire, right?" The king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom nodded slightly and said, "That's right. This king did indeed receive such news, but it was completely refuted by the news brought back by Prime Minister Che. Then I can tell you clearly now that this matter is true, and that person is me, Changyang Shoten." Jianshin's tone was very calm. However, this calm tone caused the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom to tremble. He looked at him with an expression of disbelief, unable to say anything for a long time. The king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom slumped on his dragon throne, his arms trembling slightly. It took him a long time to come back to his senses and let out a long sigh. He said, "I never thought that the person I offended would actually be the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. No wonder the Qin Empire mobilized such a large force." The king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom did not doubt Genshin's identity as the imperial protector of the Qin Empire. This was because everything that had happened so far had completely confirmed Genshin's identity. Only the lofty imperial protector would be able to make the Qin Empire expend so much effort to send an army and several imperial advisors from so far away. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame yourself for provoking the Changyang Prefecture. That's why you ended up like this. Even if you asked the sect of Dragon and Tiger to intervene, it wouldn't change anything. Your Majesty of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, do you now understand the whole story? Jianshin's tone was somewhat dignified. Sigh. The king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom let out a long sigh. In that instant, he seemed to have aged a lot. His expression was dispirited. The king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom nodded weakly and said, I understand everything now. Making an enemy out of the kingdom of Jessin was a completely wrong decision. Now that I'm here, you can do whatever you want of me." Jianshin did not waste any more words. He waved his hand and shouted, "Capture him and take him away." Immediately, 2 elite soldiers of the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion, stepped forward and grabbed the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. Without giving him any face, they dragged the king out by his arms. After taking the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom away, a fire elemental sword condensed in Jianshin's hand. It then turned into a fiery red ray of light and shot forward, shattering the golden dragon throne the king was sitting on. With the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom captured, it could be said that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was half destroyed. Qin Wuming had the soldiers of the Eastern Deity Sword Legion search the entire palace. Capture all the members of the royal family. Don't let any of them go. As for the maids and servants, don't make things difficult for them. Jianshin ordered. Yes. Qin Wuming accepted the order and immediately went to make the arrangements. Jianshin looked at the floor and a disdainful sneer appeared at the corner of his mouth. Shortly after, his right foot gently stepped on the ground. The entire hall trembled as if an earthquake had occurred, but it quickly calmed down. A few kilometers away, in a secret tunnel 10 meters underground, a large group of royal family members of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom were fleeing outside with panicked expressions, accompanied by dozens of guards. There were over 1,000 people, and their messy footsteps in the quiet tunnel appeared abnormally oppressive. From time to time, panicked shouts could be heard. These people were either the king's concubines, relatives of the royal family, or ministers living in the palace. Hurry up! The people in front run faster. Otherwise, the enemy will catch up. Everyone, hurry up! If someone catches up to us, we'll all be finished. Once we escape, we'll all be safe. Everyone, run faster, run faster. Aya, you're stepping on me. You're stepping on me. A large group of people held torches high and panted as they fled in a panic in the dark and damp tunnel. The tunnel was not very smooth. From time to time, people would step on the uneven ground and fall. Then, they would be mercilessly stepped on by the people behind them, causing them to cry out in pain. Some delicate women even cried out in pain. However, at a time like this, everyone only cared about their own lives. Who would have the time to take care of them? At this moment, a loud rumbling sound came from the front. The entire tunnel trembled violently. Following that, terrified screams came from the front. Not good, the tunnel has collapsed. The road ahead is blocked. We're finished. The tunnel has been blocked. We can't escape at all. What? The tunnel collapsed? How is this possible? This tunnel has been reinforced. How could it collapse? In the main hall of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's palace, Jianqin had already arrived in front of the loyal eunuch. He asked, "Who are you?" Seeing that Jianqin's attention had turned to him, the old eunuch was so frightened that his entire body trembled. He immediately knelt on the ground and said in a trembling voice, I am the king's imperial eunuch. I'm in charge of the king's daily extravagance. Tell me where the second prince went." Jianqin's tone was very calm and gentle. However, it created a huge pressure in the old eunuch's heart. I don't know. The old eunuch was a person who feared death. He was so frightened that his entire body was trembling. Jianqin's gaze turned cold. He said, "What a loyal eunuch. However, even if you don't tell me, I can still find the second prince if I spend some time. Right now, I'm only giving you a chance to live. If you don't cherish it, don't blame me for being ruthless." Jianqin, they most likely used the secret tunnel to escape. As long as we find the tunnel, we will be able to find their tracks. Princess Yu suddenly spoke. Jianqin shook his head. He said, "I know they escaped through the secret tunnel. However, the second prince is not in the tunnel. Moreover, there is no sign of the second prince in the palace." "How do you know the second prince is not in the tunnel?" Princess Yu asked curiously. From the moment they entered the palace, she had been following behind Jianqin. She did not see anyone send a message to Jianqin. Therefore, she was very curious as to how Jianqin knew the second prince was not in the tunnel. Jianqin smiled. He said, "I have my ways." Then, Jianqin's gaze fell on the old eunuch again. He asked, "Now are you going to tell me or not?" Seeing that the old eunuch still did not speak, Jianqin smiled coldly. He said, "It doesn't matter if you don't tell me. I only need to spend some time to find the second prince. Men, drag him away and execute him on the spot." Chapter 499. You better not lie to me. Jianqin glared at the old eunuch and threatened. The old eunuch's body trembled slightly, and his entire body fell to the ground. His eyes were filled with fear as he said in a trembling voice, "This servant wouldn't dare. This servant wouldn't dare." Where did the second prince go? Jianqin believed that with the second prince's character, he must have exaggerated the matter in front of the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and nearly caused a calamity to befall the Chanyang prefecture. Therefore, Jianqin would definitely not let the second prince off. Moreover, back in the palace of the kingdom of Jessin, Jianqin and the second prince had some grudges. The second prince left the palace 2 days ago. This servant heard from His Majesty that he seemed to have gone to the Luoyun kingdom. The old eunuch's voice trembled as he answered Jianqin's question. "What? The second prince has already left the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom?" Jianqin frowned slightly. If the second prince had really left the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, it wouldn't be easy to find him. Yes. This servant heard it from His Majesty. It shouldn't be false, the old eunuch said. Gentian frowned and pondered for a while. Then he had 2 soldiers from the Eastern deity, Sword Legion, take the old eunuch away. This second prince is quite clever. I didn't expect him to escape. Gentian, what do you plan to do? Mingdong asked. He also held a grudge against the second prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. I won't let him go, but there's no need to rush right now. Once we figure out the second prince's whereabouts, we can come up with a plan. Let's wait here for now. The people who escaped through the secret tunnel will be brought here very soon, Jianshin said. Currently, the palace of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom was in chaos. Although the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had been captured and the palace had been occupied, there were still tens of thousands of imperial guards in the palace. Although a large portion of the imperial guards had surrendered, there were still a few loyal imperial guards who fought with their lives on the line. They fought fiercely with the soldiers of the Eastern deity, Sword Legion, causing the sounds of fighting to ring out everywhere in the palace. However, how could these imperial guards be a match for the elite troops of the Qin Empire? Although there were a few Earth Saint Masters among the imperial guards, the Eastern deity Sword Legion also had them, and their numbers were several times greater than the imperial guards. Therefore, although the resistance of the imperial guards were fierce, they were powerless and easily defeated by the Eastern deity Sword Legion. With the Eastern deity Sword Legion of the Qin Empire's deity, Sword Legion of the heavens and deity, Sword Legion of the Eastern deity, Sword Legion only suffered with the deity Pei. After completely defeating the resistance in the palace, the soldiers of the Eastern deity Sword Legion also carried out a final cleanup of the palace. However, they also obeyed Genshin's orders and only captured the members of the imperial family and a few important people. They did not make things difficult for the maids and servants. Under this carpet-like search, many of the extremely hidden basements of the palace were searched. They discovered a large number of nobles hiding inside, and in the end they even discovered an extremely hidden secret passage. Afterwards, the soldiers of the Eastern deity Sword Legion immediately formed groups and searched along the secret passage. Moreover, with the Earth Saint Masters leading the way, they carefully and cautiously searched inside. Not long after, they reached the end of the secret passage and captured over 1,000 members of the imperial family who had been trapped inside due to the collapse of the passage. They were all escorted to the central hall to await the imperial protector's orders. In the central hall of the palace of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, there was an extremely spacious area outside the hall. At this moment, there were over 2,000 members of the imperial family in various attire kneeling there. There were men and women, old and young, and all of them had faces of fear as their bodies trembled. Everyone thought that it would be difficult for them to survive. The fear of death filled their hearts, causing many of them to sob softly. This was because on the Tianyuan continent, all the rulers and subjects of a fallen nation would be mercilessly killed by the enemy. Even the concubines and children of the king were no exception. Very few of them would survive. This was a method of eliminating the source of trouble. Around the members of the imperial family, several hundred soldiers in silver-white armor stood there like statues. They formed a circle around the 2,000 members of the imperial family who were kneeling on the ground. Jianshin calmly stared at the group of people kneeling on the ground and said, "Next, I will ask you a few questions. The first person to answer will be immediately released and will keep his life." Hearing this, everyone's eyes lit up. Soon after, they were filled with excitement. Their originally dead hearts were reignited with the flames of hope. Although Jianshin seemed extremely young and they did not know who Jianshin was, they were not idiots. Their eyes were bright as snow. Seeing so many people of high status and Qin Wuming and his sons standing behind Jianshin, they knew that he was the leader of this group of people. Such a great figure would always keep his word. In front of so many people, how could he joke with a group of prisoners like them? How many princes does the king of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom have in total? Jianshin immediately asked the first question. Three. There are three. As soon as Genshin finished speaking, many people scrambled to answer. Their voices were extremely noisy, but the content was completely the same. Now that the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom had reached its end, in order to survive, they had already tossed their loyalty to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom to the winds. Seeing that the effect was actually much better than he had expected, Genshin could not help but reveal a satisfied smile. He said, "Very good, everyone is very cooperative. If you continue to cooperate, I might be happy and release everyone." "Sir, is what you said true? If we cooperate with you, are you really willing to release all of us?" A voice rang out from the crowd. His voice was filled with satisfaction and concealed excitement. Genshin had a gentle smile on his face, but in the eyes of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's royal family, this smile was extremely terrifying. It was like the smile of a demon. Genshin pointed to the group behind him and said, "Everyone has seen it, right? The people around me are either the monarch of the Kingdom of Jessin or the commander-in-chief of the Qin Empire's army. In front of so many people, how could I speak without thinking and not keep my promise?" Genshin's words had undoubtedly reassured them. Perhaps they did not have enough faith in the monarch of the Kingdom of Jessin, but it was different for the commander-in-chief of the Qin Empire's army. Such a status was even more intimidating than the monarch of the Kingdom of Jessin. His status was much higher than the monarch of the Kingdom of Jessin, and now even the commander-in-chief of the Qin Empire's army could only stand behind this young man. It was easy to imagine just how high this young man's status in the Qin Empire was. Genshin continued, "Of course, I will only let a few people stay." The meaning behind Genshin's words caused the 2,000 people kneeling on the ground to immediately think of the princes of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and some of their direct relatives. "I wonder if the princes of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom are here?" Genshin asked. Yes, he is here. He is the first prince. This is the third prince." As soon as Genshin's words fell, many people immediately pointed out the first prince and the third prince. The two princes' faces instantly paled without a trace of blood. "Bring them out," Genshin ordered in a low voice. Immediately, a few soldiers in silver-white armor pointed out the princes and forcefully brought them to Genshin. Genshin sized up the two princes. Perhaps they were hiding their identities, wearing the clothes of a servant. Their clothes were stained with mud from the tunnels, and their hair was disheveled. They looked like beggars on the streets. Of the two princes, one looked to be nearing 30 years old, while the other looked to be in his 20s. They looked about the same age as Genshin. The two princes stood in front of Genshin with their heads lowered, trembling with fear. They did not even dare to look at Genshin. "You are the first prince and third prince of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom?" Genshin asked. Yes. The two princes were greedy and afraid of death. They did not possess any pride. When faced with Genshin's question, they trembled as they answered. "Tell me, where did the second prince go?" Genshin asked. "He went to the Sunset Kingdom." The one who spoke was the first prince. He did not hesitate to reveal the second prince's whereabouts. Although he was related to the second prince by blood, he did not have a good relationship with the second prince, who knew how many small conflicts they had in secret. Naturally, he wished for the second prince to die. Genshin frowned slightly and asked, "What did the second prince go to the Sunset Kingdom for?" I don't know. I'm afraid that only Royal Father knows the answer to this matter. If you want to know, then go ask him." The first prince stammered, pushing all the blame to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's king. Genshin muttered to himself for a while and said, "Take the two princes away and keep a close watch. As for this group of people, check their spatial belts and spatial rings. Then let them all go." The two princes were taken away. Then the 2,000 or so members of the royal family were all searched by the soldiers of the Eastern Deity, Sword Legion. As a wealthy kingdom, the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's wealth was much greater than the Kingdom of Jessin. The total wealth of these royal family members was also a terrifying figure. Jianqin did not kill them all. He left a path of survival for the members of the imperial family. He only took away most of their wealth, leaving behind a small portion for them to survive. Afterwards, he kept his promise and let them all go. After dealing with the 2,000 royal family members, Jianqin turned to Qin Wuming and his 2 sons and said, "Qin Wutian, immediately take a group of people to the Sunset Kingdom to pursue the second prince who escaped. You must capture him." This matter could be said to have arisen entirely because of the second prince. Jianqin would definitely not let the second prince off. "Yes, I'll immediately mobilize the men." Qin Wutian replied and immediately went to mobilize the troops. Then he led a small elite group of 100 people to the Sunset Kingdom. At this moment, a soldier in silver armor came to Jianqin and knelt on one knee. He said, reporting to the imperial protector, Lord Jianqin, "We have discovered the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom's treasury." Jianqin's eyes lit up. He waved his hand and said, "Lead the way immediately. I'll vote for PK and see the great god at the annual meeting."